Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all having a brilliant start to your week, ready once again for another round of the Evolution Sim Racing GT4 TCR Multiclass Championship here for round 6 at the Circuit of the Americas. This 5.5 kilometer circuit carved into that Texan landscape got a combination high downforce sections, long straights, and thankfully for us, plenty of overtaking opportunities as we look ahead to 3 20-minute sprint races. Back to this format for the first time since round 2, nearly a month ago. My name is Joseph Glass, and as always, I'm delighted to be joined in the commentary box by Mr. Dara Thacker. And Dara, what a place to end up for the close of this, quintet, 5 races we've had in the US in a row before we head back to Europe for the final month of the championship.
Yeah, this is a circuit that I think is going to be absolutely fantastic. A fantastic way for us to end our little American journey throughout this season. 3 20-minute races here as well. A circuit that is made for racing, I think, particularly in some slightly slower machines. So really looking forward to this tonight. And hopefully there's going to be some drivers that can get themselves into championship contention with only a few weeks to go after this one.
Yeah, we've been seeing lots of those changes, lots of those positions, should I say, changing quite a lot, particularly in this championship, but also over on a Thursday night as well. And yeah, we'll take a look, as always, before the racing gets underway at the championship order. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. It's definitely a track that, well, I'm not sure if the GT4s are that accustomed to this kind of circuit. As we said, some pretty tricky braking zones, decent straights going on, and obviously that run through the first sector, through turns 2, all the way through turn 9, really very tricky on the tyres. The drivers will probably be quite pleased that they only have to survive for 20 minutes and don't have to do that kind of sector for 45 like we saw last week.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of drivers that are going to be happy with the format again. It's nice that we change it every single week. It really keeps the championship fresh. It means that there's something different every single week. And I think particularly for this circuit to have the 3 20-minute races is fantastic.
I totally agree. So then, before we head to trackside, let's do what we always do and take a quick look at the sponsors, the calendar, and the run-through of the championship order. So as always, a big thanks to Kame, the GP2 group, and Keenan Eco Energy for their support of the series. And yeah, as we said, now into the 5th round running in these American circuits. Then we finish the final 4 weeks of the championship after tonight: Imola, Mugello, Bathurst, and then Brands Hatch. So a great run-in to the end of the season. That doubleheader in Italy will certainly be entertaining, and then 2 very tricky circuits for the drivers to get the teeth stuck into in the final 2 weeks of the championship. A handful, all of our formats left to go, only 2 more of these, and then one of those 45-minute rounds left. So lots and lots on the cards. So then, as always, we'll start with the GT4 Pro class, and leading the way, no surprise, after the absolutely mega run of form that he's had, winning every single race so far this season bar 1, is Mr. William Humphrey on nice rounded 550 points. Leads the way ahead of Ben Smith. That gap now 74 points to the Lumen Flux driver, and another 86 down to Yannis Olber. So every week that Will continues this run, he extends that gap, as you would expect. Ben not having too much of a bad time of it on the podium every round so far this season. So net, he's had the better results really, but Will's win streak has of course brought home nearly maximum points throughout the first half of this championship. Murray Sidmer is doing pretty well. He's had a couple of shaky results, but so far it's doing him well enough to stay inside the top 4. Not quite as much as a comfortable margin as the guys in the top 3 have. Thomas Pugh, 21 points behind him. A couple of P5s for him this time out. Let's see if he can pick up where he left off and stay there. Maybe he can improve. Try and get himself inside the top 3, of course. More opportunities to do that tonight than we've seen for quite some weeks. Adam Atherton is sitting there in P6 ahead of Jeremy Ulemans and Joe Sparrow in the top 8. It's Lawrence and Auden inside P9 with Jeff Hibbert just inside the top 10. Stephen Donnelly 20 points off the back of him for the JSD Racing team. Then it's Jacob Jenner, who is again 20 points back. So really, aside from a handful of drivers, a lot of these guys within 20 points, some within 15, most within 10. Definitely lots of opportunities for the rest of the weeks for these guys to change up the order.
Yeah, and over in the AM category, it's getting pretty close at the top of the tree. Niels Kula has the championship lead, but after the last couple of weeks, hasn't particularly gone his way. He's hanging on to that championship lead. Robin Noel Brown with a win in the opening 15-minute race last week at Sebring puts him into P2 in the championship, only 4 points back. And with Liam Fraser winning the second race last week and picking up all 100 points through it, he finds himself now inside the top 3 and only 17 points back from Niels Kula. 5 podiums in 5 for Liam Fraser. He really is on a hot streak, and a drop round which is worth 81 points means that he is in for a good night either way. Luke Bailey in P4, consistent results has him in 4th, and with John Lubbock and Edvard Grobe fighting over 5th, it's going to be interesting to see who pulls ahead in those two as they're tied on points. Coming into tonight, they were also both on the podium last week at Sebring. Dean Sheesby, Klaas Vellen and Rob Gregg are inside the top 9, just shy of the 300-point mark. And again, consistent result getting them to where they are. 3 podiums for Klaas Vellen, a podium for Rob Gregg. We'll see if they can try and replicate that tonight. Charlie Stottard rounds out our top 10 with Daniel Paul and Matt Stace on the outside looking into that top 10, and they'll be trying to get as many points as they can tonight at COTA.
Very good, very good. So there's a little rundown of the GT4 class, and now, as always, we'll take a look at how the TCR guys are getting on. Of course, the second division in this championship. So Mr. McKinley leading the way, as was the case last week, and the gap to Logan McKinsey is growing week by week. Now it's up to 96 points, the difference between the Lumen Motorsport driver and the Team Shelter driver, and closely followed by Jaden Scotton. He's definitely not out of things at the moment, getting kind of comfortable inside that top 3. Jay Corley kind of knocking on the door. He had a pretty strong outing last week with his best round of the season so far. 2 P2 finishes for the second Team Shelter driver. It would take quite a lot for him, I think, to get inside the top 3, but Jaden can definitely fancy his chances at keeping with Logan McKinsey all the way through. Anthony Hilton tied on points with his teammate then, so three of the top 5 there of the Team Shelter drivers doing very well at the moment. One in the Hyundai, one in the Audi, and one in the Honda. So yeah, pretty good spray for these guys at the moment. He's just ahead of Keith Calhoun inside the top 6, 14 points separating him from Anthony Hilton inside the top 5. We then look further down the order. It's only 8 to Scott Malcolm. So Lumen and Team Shelter doing very, very well toward the front of this TCR Pro category. He's ahead of James Howarth. Just the one podium for the DXT Motorsports driver. Again, had a pretty strong result last time out. Consistent results once again. Let's keep our eyes out if James can get himself back on the podium. He's looked pretty likely, but just hasn't been able to convert toward the end of these races. Max Nevincharny had a decent result last week, but nothing like this, the results that he was getting right toward the start of the season. He's in P9 at the moment, but again, so much can change. Kevin Marshall says staying just inside the top 10. After that, though, these guys aren't really fighting for much inside the championship. Alak Iyenga hasn't really been with us for some time, and Branko Kubovic all the same. 66 points scored in round 2. That's what he's managed to keep a hold of so far this season. So really, it's a fight for the top 10 between these guys, and let's see who can get inside the top 3 to get their hands on one of those trophies in just a month's time.
Yeah, of course, those trophies. The prizes that they're all looking for, and I wouldn't mind one myself. Sarika Desla in the TCR Ams leads the way after a decent enough round last week at Sebring. He regained that championship lead after Gordon Hales didn't score any points, dropped last week, scored 45, and dropped behind Sarika Desla. So Sarika Desla gaining and had 116 points last week, which shoots him into that championship lead. Rob Smith in P3, he is still kicking around and very much involved. 1 win and 5 other podiums this season means that he is very much in contention. Jason Haddington and Martin Kenyon are fighting in 4th and 5th, trying to get themselves towards that top 3, but are kind of in a battle between themselves at the moment. Steve Rubino is looking like he's going to try and pick up some consistent results. Race winner so far this season, looking to replicate some of that magic tonight. Andrew Fellows, again, consistency from him, one of only 2 men in the field to have been in the top 10 in every single race so far. He's just not necessarily had those podiums, 1 podium so far, to go with the consistency. Danny Weir has had a podium as well, and similar amount of top 10s, and his consistency gets him into the top 8. Dean Sargent finds himself 9th, and then it's a bit of a gap back to Mark Parkhurst, who wasn't here last week, but has a couple of podiums to his name. Let's see what he can do. Ashley Brooks, though, was the standout figure last week. 150 points out of a possible 150. Saw him shoot up the order and onto the 200-point mark. He's going to be someone to watch through the second half of this season. And then we've got David Randalls rounding out our top 12, a long way back. But let's see if he can cross that 100-point threshold tonight.
Yeah, it seems that the 2 AM classes are the ones providing that really strong competition so far this season. Mr. Hill, Sarika Desla, and of course Robin Noel Brown and Nils Culler taking each other all the way to the line. Let's not count out Liam Fraser in that as well. That leads us nicely then onto the teams, and I say that because this is also heating up as well. Not many points separating the guys really inside the top 4. So the team shelter guys, McKinsey, Corley and Hilton, as we highlighted earlier in the TCR Pro category, doing very well to be inside the top 5, but they're only a handful of points ahead of the GlassTech DXT team of Yanis Aubert, William Humphrey and Francois Brandet. Of course, Aubert and Humphrey inside the top 3 of the GT4 Pro division. And then the same can be said for that Kame GP2 team. They're still in with a pretty good chance, and they have 2 drivers in themselves as well. Noel Brown and Sarika Desla nigh on, leading the way in their championships as well. If not leading, definitely there or thereabouts. Mr. Ludbrook, part of that group as well. It's next is the Axis SimSports Blue team, and again, you can't count any of these teams out. That the deficit down there, 60 points or so to the Lumen Flux, is a little bit of a bigger gap. But from the top 4, within the top 4, lots can change with 1 or 2 bad results. The top 3 have stayed the same for quite some time, but I wouldn't count out that Axis team either. After that, Lumen Flux and Lumen Motorsports, the Moonshiners Racing Club, there or thereabouts as well, before we reach actually 3 in side 4 places for all of the flatline drivers. That takes us down to P11 with the 2-man army of Alan Atherton and Gordon Hales in the Lumen Pulse team. Well then, lots for these drivers to consider in the run-in for the final half of this championship, and of course it all starts here, Dara, with, well, you've got to get yourself a good qualifying lap time. We're right on board at the moment with Mr. Liam Fraser, the man doing pretty well for himself inside the top 3 of that AM class, and he's making his way round toward the final sector now, and he's about to start a lap with us. Why don't we have a ride on board with the Mercedes as he takes us around a lap of COTA, Dara?
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what Liam Fraser can do realistically. He's had a good run of results of late, and definitely a driver who's going to be fancying himself to get another strong few finishes. It all starts though with a qualifying lap here this evening. Of course, race 2 will have a top 10 reverse grid, race 3 will have a top 15 reverse grid, but race 1 is decided in the qualifying section. Up towards turn 1, it's such a steep hill, and it's difficult to really pick your braking zone. You can just about see he's nearly going to clip the apex, maybe a little bit wide, and then dive back down the hill, get it to the left-hand side of the circuit, and let the car run through turn 2. Should be flat out. There's more than enough downforce in this car to be able to do that. Then it's going to get a little bit trickier. 3, 4 and 5 come to you in quick succession, every single corner slowing a touch in succession. Turn 6 is a very long right-hander. You just never stop turning right before the flick at turn 7. It's going to set you up nicely for the right-hander at turn 8, but you've got to get to the left-hand side of the circuit to open up the corner as much as you can. Flick it through turn 9 as you rise over the crest of the hill, and make sure you don't drift out too far wide. Turn 10 is this downhill left-hander before you get set up for the hairpin, which is going to be so crucial in the race to get a good exit out of. Of course, turn 12, the next corner after this one, is probably the prime overtaking opportunity on the racetrack. So a good exit out of here, as it looks like Fraser's been able to do, will enable you to get a great run, maybe enough of a slipstream to make an inside or an outside line move down at turn 12. It is such a long run down towards such a heavy braking zone on this circuit in comparison. It's got to get it to the right hand side of the circuit once again and pick your braking point. Try and turn it in and shorten off the corner as much as you can, as Liam Fraser is doing expertly really there. He's not using as much of the track on the outside, but he's making sure he gets it to the left hand side for turn 13. Of course, double apex right hander through 13 and through 14. It's then a double apex left-hander through 15 and through 16. Differing lines in the race means that we could see quite a few moves made down here on the exit. Got to make sure you get the power down enough around the triple right-hander at 17, 18 and 19. It's 1, 2, 3 apex corner as you run it all the way around past the tower, of course, which stands atop of this circuit. 2 more corners to go. A flick to the left. Make sure you keep the car under control and don't drift it out too far wide. Easy to scrub off a lap time there. And then the final corner, tighter than first appears. Got to make sure you keep the car pinned to the inside, get the car out of the corner and run it to the line. Short run to the line for Liam Fraser. And where's he going to go with his lap time? It's going to be good enough only for P3 in the end last moment.
Yeah, lots of times coming in up and down the 2 divisions at the moment. Humphrey 1.9 seconds clear of anyone in his class, and he's ahead of his teammate Yannis Olber. Of course, we saw those 2 drivers somewhat running away with it at the start of the second race last week, but at the moment Humphrey is the man to beat, as we might have expected. But that gap, Dara, is I think bigger than, well, certainly bigger than what I would have planned after just 1 lap as well. I mean, it might come down as the laps go on, but that's some marker set by Humphrey there after just 1 lap.
Yeah, I guess part of that may come down to the fact that this track is complex. It is very complex. I mean, you've got so many combinations of corners where you can gain and lose so much time by having just the wrong line or just the right line. And I think Williams probably absolutely nailed that lap. But the fact that Yannis is nearly 2 seconds back, a driver of Yannis's quality, mind you, really does show how quick William Humphrey is. And how impressive he has been. I was doing a broadcast actually on Saturday evening, which was an endurance race here at COTA. I don't know if William was in the race, but if he was, it may mean that he's had a little bit of practice in the last week or so, more than the others may have done around the circuit. But either way, 2 seconds is huge.
No, you're totally right. He's, well, I don't want to say he's always practicing, but he's certainly one to, you know, attend the championships that he's taken part in, be fully prepared. And I know him and Yannis and Francois chatting away in the group chat, trying to find some lap time and whatnot. And I think they were a bit concerned about the pace of Marius Hibmer, actually, who was setting pretty good lap times throughout his week worth of practice. Here he is, actually, about to cross the line. Let's see if he can do anything to dent that margin at the front for Humphrey. It's a little bit closer, still 1.4 seconds. Humphrey's second lap nearly, 2 tenths slower than his first. Yannis Olber bringing that down to 1.2 seconds. That's right on board with Humphrey then, as he heads through the first sector again, heading through 3, 4 and 5. Let's see if we can pick out any particularly risky zones that he heads through where the car is fully on the limit. Let's see, staying just away from those sausage curves, which, as we know, can be so crucial. If you hit one of those, it can not only damage your car, but it'll certainly disrupt your entire lap. But the time is found by getting as close to them as you can. He's finished the first sector pretty quickly. Is he up? Yes, he is. I believe he's up in the first sector. He's currently got the purple sector in 2 of the 4 sectors around this circuit. Pricking your braking point into the the slow speed left-hander at turn 11. Not using too much of that runoff. But again, I don't think we've seen, Dara, a qualifying session. I mean, it's not over yet. It's getting there. 3.5 minutes to go. I don't think we've seen a qualifying session so sparse between the drivers right at the front of the field.
I think last week, didn't we see how close it was? I mean, some of the gaps come down to thousandths as well in the GT3 on a Thursday night, how close it was, a little bit further away. That is probably partially the nature of the circuit. We're not going to get many laps per race here. I mean, we may even only get 8, probably 9, but it's going to be thin on the ground with the amount of laps that we do have. With the current fastest lap time being a 2:13, I mean, we are really pushing it close because, 8 laps at that pace would be just shy of 20 minutes. So we're going to get 9 laps at a maximum. And if you're able to gain a second a lap, that's really going to be able to help you get away in those danger areas around the circuit. And that's, I think, what Williams hoping for. But with there only being 9 laps and not too much time to separate the cars, hopefully we get some close battles throughout the race, even if qualifying looks a little bit difficult to keep the times close together.
Yeah, it's always frantic, obviously different to the 15-minute ones for sure, but this is about the kind of duration that I think these drivers will enjoy. These cars usually good enough to run for 30 minutes quite competitively. 20 minutes, you'll definitely be able to put in some good laps. And, we don't hope for anything, but if some of the drivers in behind these leaders can get ahead at the start and maybe make it a little bit more difficult, you never know. Marius Hibmer there, we spoke about him earlier. He's still pretty far away, but he's the only man at the moment inside of that 1 second. In fact, inside of 9/10 just. So he's going to have one more lap to go then. In fact, no, he's not. The top 5 already back inside the pit lane. Sarika Desla couldn't quite get past Rob Smith down there in the TCR AM class. 39 1,000ths of a second separating those guys. Here comes Jay Corley around the final couple of sectors. He's got quite a margin. He can get on the front row of his class by just getting over 0.2 of a second over Andrew McKinley. The man currently in P2 in that class, Logan McKenzie, has pipped the championship leader. So it's going to be tooth and nail between those two throughout these sessions. Of course, remember, the TCR drivers usually not impacted by the reverse grids that we have tonight. So it's just the GT4s that have to consider that. Looks as though Jay Corley has not improved on that effort. James Howarth will be next across the line. We've got Kenyon, Hales, Fraser, Grobe and Costas, the men left on the circuit. And aside from that, with only 1 minute to go, the order probably won't change an awful lot from this point.
No, I can't imagine that there's going to be many more moves up and down the order. But, I mean, with it being a long lap, some drivers will not have set their final laps yet. But let's see. Around the final couple of corners for the likes of James Hayworth, needs to find a little bit of time through the final corner. I don't think it's going to happen for him in the PG Tips car, and will stay down in P6. And that should be session over for him. He may as well go make a cuppa because he's going to be starting towards the back of the field. And you don't want to get involved at turn 1.
No, well, Martin Kenyon probably won't have time to make a cuppa. He's going to be crossing the line just as the session comes to an end. He is going to get there, as you said earlier, short run down to the line just as you come out the final corner. And of course, a lot of these guys might have struggled. I mean, most of them have set lap times, but I wonder how many of them have been impacted by the track limits around this place. Very easy to get an invalidation, of course. Quite tempting sometimes to take quite a lot of the inside curbs, which can, of course, lead to a run off the circuit and picking up that 1x. Just one thing to mention. We have just the one driver serving a penalty from the stewards. That is Charlie Stothard serving his second of, I believe, 3 weeks' worth. So he will be starting at the back of the grid. I think it's just a back of the grid start, not a pit lane start. But then he will have to serve a drive-through as well. So we saw him last week coming back through the field quite well, actually, in that first race out at Sebring. And of course, Charlie will know that if he can get right in the order, if he's got the pace, by the time the third race comes around, he could be right in there to score some pretty good points.
And that's what the aim's going to be. No doubt about that for Charlie. He'll be looking to try and get through as quickly as he can, and he'll need to because it's going to be a big old field. It
absolutely is. And let's take a look through that field then before we get started. Lots and lots of grids to go through tonight, so I will get us underway with a quick rundown of the 40 drivers that we have with us this evening. So William Humphrey takes pole position by, maybe not definitively, but by one of the biggest margins of the season, by just under 9/10 of a second ahead of Marius Hibmer. Those two will share the front row ahead of Yannis Aubert and Thomas Pugh on row 2. Mitchell Costas, he's turned up and he's doing a pretty good job at the moment for Sweat Sim Racing. He's inside the top 5 ahead of the pole man in the GT4 AM class. That's Nils Kuller. Separating him from his championship rival is Jeremy Ulemans, and then it's Robin Noel Brown, who want to get a pretty quick start ahead of the Dutchman to try and catch up to Kuller ahead. That's row 4. Then it's Edward Grobe and Stephen Donnelly inside the top 10. Adam Atherton and Liam Fraser will start ahead of John Ludbrook and Luke Bailey. Then it's Dean Sheesby and Rob Gregg on the 8th row of the grid. Josh Barra and Lauren Den Ouden will start in P18 ahead of Jeff Hibbert and Daniel Poole inside the top 20. It's then the leader in the TCR Pro class of Logan McKenzie ahead of his championship rival Andrew McKinley. Jay Cole is there to try and put a car in between him and his teammate, and then it's Matt Stace inside the top 24 ahead of Jaden Scotton in the top 25. Alok Yenga is back with us on the circuit for just the second time this season. He starts in P5 in class ahead of James Howarth and then Rob Smith. Hussein Sarakadusl will start ahead of Max Navinchani inside the top 30 with Anthony Hilton, Gordon Hales, Kevin Marshall, Scott Malcolm and Andrew Fellows the top 35. Martin Kenyon, Danny Weir, Steve Rubino and Jason Haddington the final of our qualifiers ahead of the 206, of course, the GT4 car, Charlie Stothard, starting down there at the back of the field on row 20. What a night he's got, and as we said, an opportunity with the reverse grids and 3 races to really get toward the front of the field. Come the checker flag in that feature race.
Looking forward really to seeing how this is going to pan out. It's a good looking grid, a nice amount of drivers as well, but there's so much action that can unfold around this circuit. So many points to be won as well. These 3 20-minute race evenings can either be, your best evenings or your worst evenings. And when some evenings only, offer you up 100 points, you really need to make sure that these are your best evenings. Some drivers will naturally miss out, but I think for some in the championship, the pressure will be on this evening to get themselves a bit of a boost going into the likes of Imola, Mugello in the next couple of weeks, which will be much, much different challenges from this. But yeah, really looking forward to seeing how this one's going to unfold.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that we've got our work cut out tonight, but so do the drivers, of course. Just the second time this season where we're going to have to run through 3 start procedures, 3 checkered flags, and so much racing action. It's so good to see the field condensed. Humphrey is going to have to drop the hammer very early before that start line, I believe, unless there's another one. There must be a second one at the front of the field, so that does give the guys an opportunity to get going. It's going to be Humphrey, and then he's got his teammate starting right in behind him, and he has gone just before the line. That should allow a lot of those drivers toward the back of the field to get through the final corner. Comes across to the right hand side to cut off Yannis Aubert, who looks as though he has got his nose in front. I think that's Edward Grove, who's got past Thomas Pugh, I think, in the Axis Sim Sports machine, and it is, in fact, look, he's got his nose ahead. Mario Simba has taken that move back on Yannis Aubert and puts a dent in between those 2 Glass Tech cars. Humphrey all the while getting away at the front. Ilaka Yanga and Scott Malcolm have had an issue down toward the back of the field. Let's see how the TCR guys are getting on. That's Liam Fraser in the barrier. The TCR seem to have got away okay, aside from 1 or 2.
Yeah, it's disaster really for Liam Fraser that he's right at the back of the field again on such a good run of form. He is going to be under a lot of pressure now, being right down towards the back of the field and almost certainly not going to be in the first reverse grid, maybe not even in the second. Keep an eye on that. Jeff Hibbard trying to fight his way through as they run their way through turn 10 now. Logan McKenzie looking for a move as he keeps himself connected to Andrew McKinley just up in front. The mix of the TCRs and the GT4s, something that we don't see too often off the start, but we're seeing today. A couple of drivers going wide, including Joe Sparrow, as he was battling away with one of the AM drivers.
Yeah, I think one of them there made a pretty desperate lunge all the way to the inside of that left-hander. We'll see if we can cut back to that one in a short while. Yannis Aubert going side by side with Marius Him, but just about left enough room. I think there was a little bit of contact there between those 2 drivers. Pressure on here for the 3-3-4 ahead of the German. William Humphrey not quite that far ahead at the moment, but all the pressure that Aubert is putting on Marius at the moment will be enough to allow Humphrey to stretch his legs. They needed to stay ahead of Humphrey if it was possible at the start of the race, given the qualifying times, but it seems as though he's got himself away nicely, and it would be surprised if that wasn't sort of normal service for at least this opening race. We've got Jeff Hibbert here. He's trying to mince it in a little bit with these TCR drivers. Logan McKenzie says, you know what, mate, I'm not going to make it easy for you. If you want to get past me, you've got to prove that you can get past me. Is he going to stick it up the inside the Mercedes? Yes, he is, but around the outside once again goes the 104, just coming around the final corner now. He's got just about a second's gap ahead of Andrew McKinney, the second driver there in the black Honda, coming out of the final corner now. Hussein Sarkadesla here, leading Rob Smith the way up the bank. Of course, such a steep run up toward turn 1, takes the inside line right from the get-go, and he's going to force the flatline car around the outside here if he fancies taking the lead of their class.
Yeah, let's see. Sarah Kadesla, of course, championship leader, just trying to hold on. Should do down the inside at turn 1, but you can get a good exit off of the corner, which is exactly what Rob Smith has got. Inside line as well will favour him through 2. But he's not going to brave it in towards 3 or 4, far too far back to make any kind of move through there. Almost got to be careful of a couple of the pros behind. I mean, the amount of TCRs that we're seeing in the pit lane as well isn't necessarily a good sign, but at least they won't be covered in the reverse grid anyway, or unlikely to be, so it won't affect them too much, but it does mean that there are some drivers that are going to be out of contention for maybe some big points tonight. The likes of Kevin Marshall, say, could have done with a good dose of points.
Yeah, I think this is what it is that we're looking at here through turn 1. Is there a little bit of a bunch up, or does everyone get through okay? There it is, ahead. That's a couple of cars sideways. Sadly, I think this will give us a bit of a better idea at what happened. A little bit of a bunch up between the leaders. Oh, and then the GT4, is that Matt Stace potentially, who comes across from the right hand side, and then yeah, no one's slowing down sadly, and that was one hell of a pile up. Some of the championship challenges ahead, I think that was Anthony Hilton off the circuit as well. So Hales, Malcolm, Hilton and Fellows back out on the circuit. Younger and Marshall say out of this race for the time being. Back toward the front of the pack then. Albert is kind of been left behind a little bit by Mario Sidmer, who's managed to resist that early pressure, staying ahead of the 3-2-1, who's now under a little bit of pressure from the Axis car of Thomas Pugh as they're about to start on their 3rd lap here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, particularly at the front of that GT4 field, how they are able to race in race 2 and 3. Of course, they will swap around after the reverse grid is applied. The likes of Robin Brown and COTA will be involved in that as they try and have a bit of a resurgence in their season. It's going to be interesting to see how it's played out, because I think Pugh has been able to get past Yannis Albert up into towards turn 1. I think that's what we're seeing in the front of the shot, side by side down the hill towards turn 2. Yes, Albert's down the inside of Thomas Pugh. You can just about see them in the distance and will keep himself ahead. That was a nice little battle into the opening turn. Yeah,
we'll take a look at that in a second. I was just seeing how Nose Colour was getting on in his pursuit of Robin Noel Brown, of course. Are these guys inside that grouping? Yes, of course they are. Just inside the top 6. Those guys will, of course, be affected, and that's very close. I'm not sure what happened there between those two drivers. It seemed as though Noel Brown was on the brakes and Nose Colour so late, or maybe Noel Brown was early by his standards, but of course you've got a Match 6 driver in front of you. That's somewhat offset him a little bit. Donnelly might fancy his chance with a run down into turn 11. Let's see how Thomas Pugh passed Yannis Albert, of course, going into turn 1. Nice little run actually. And Yannis, does he defend the inside? No, he doesn't. The Axis machine sticks his nose in and makes it somewhat easy for him. Albert looking to get the switchback, but he tries to hang it around the outside. Room's afforded, but not much between these two drivers. Albert goes ahead, and does he stay ahead? I think, did we see him stay ahead? The run, yes we did. We saw him regain that place. Not a bad move by Albert around the outside, but of course, could have defended the inside line. Maybe prevented that from happening in the first place.
Yeah, I think he'll know that for next time, but he'll be at least pleased that he's got the move back and that he is in a position to be able to be considering that, rather than having to, drive from behind and rue your mistake. So there's always a silver lining for Yannis, but it does mean that he's further behind Marius than he'd otherwise like to be. But it did look like Marius was gaining away a nice little bit over the course of the last lap or so. A little bit of blinking going on is never going to be helpful to anybody. Oh my word, that is really not useful. As it's Rob Smith looking like he's all over the place with the connection at the moment. Not going to be helping out the drivers behind, that's for sure. Yeah,
I think Rob Smith probably just got out the way. I think you could tell that he didn't quite have full visibility on stuff like there. So I thought, well, he's not in my class. Let's just let him go on and see if that connection can terrorize somebody else further up the road. Of course, it's very difficult for these drivers. I'm pretty sure that's sort of client side of the driver itself, so everybody will experience that in the same way. And of course, when a driver's blinking off the circuit when you're trying to race them, it makes it very difficult to predict, are they alongside, are they ahead? I've had an occasion in the past where you see the car in front of you disappear, and then you come into a braking zone and he still hasn't reappeared, and before you know it, you've made sort of invisible contact with him. So probably a wise thing for Rob Smith just to let him through. Of course, he's now in between Sarika Desler and Smith, leading the way in that TCR AM class. So fingers crossed that GT4 doesn't get in the way of those two battling out toward the front. Lawrence de Ouden is still going toe-to-toe with Joe Sparrow. We saw these two with each other on the opening lap, and this battle is going to continue. Of course, Joe, not a man afraid of making any bold moves to see if he can get a run. It looked a little bit unsettled there on the turn-in for the Mercedes. That could allow the Porsche a little bit of a run, of course. Such a long straight down this back section, and if he gets a little bit of a drag here, which he doesn't look like he is, I was going to say he could have maybe tried to make a move up the inside. Lowry might feel the need to defend, but I think Sparrow's going to be just a little bit too back to think about that one, but not far back enough for Lawrence not to make that defense, and Joe's forced him to that tighter inside line, but sadly runs a little bit deep at the apex and doesn't get the switchback that he would have hoped for.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not the ideal situation to be in, but, you know, roll with the punches. You've still got more than half of this opening race left to go, and we've got 2 more races to see if you can pick your way a little bit further up the order. Wide, though, from Den Ouden. Through goes Joe Sparrow. That was much easier than it probably should have been in the end there, as Dan Ouden goes wide at turn 14, opens the door on Sparrow just to take the racing line and walk into it.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of thing that you hope to happen, you know, put a bit of pressure on your opponent. Of course, you don't always need to make the move yourself. Just put the pressure on them, make sure that they know that you're in their mirrors, and then, yeah, see if they can make a mistake, or how be it, though. Looks as though that Mercedes is not done with this fight yet. Right in the gearbox of that Porsche. This battle will certainly continue at the moment for the top 8 inside the GT4 Pro class. The closest battle that we have in class on the circuit at the moment. But Mitchell Costas, he, of course, the teammate of Lawrence den Ouden in that Mercedes as well, doing pretty well for himself inside the top 5. Made his debut around Long Beach just a fortnight ago, and so far he's done awfully well to turn up and start scoring some real points, putting a little bit of disruption in there between these two. And I think, Dara, this battle is continuing on through turn 10. That Audi nearly getting in the way. I think it's only a matter of time before Thomas Pugh decides to maybe slip one up the inside of Albert once again.
Yeah, and that's always going to be the risk if you're Yannis Albert. You know that that move is likely to be attempted at some point, if not made. But this is where he's got to be careful, because Thomas Pugh will know that he's got the slipstream and know that he's got the run down in towards turn 12, and all of a sudden it's going to be a thinking time for Thomas Pugh. Does he go for the move? Does he sit and wait behind? He's going to sit and wait behind this time around. He should have another 4 attempts at it, maybe a 5th, but it is going to be close naturally with the timer being whether we go 8 or 9 laps.
Yeah, completely right. So, battle for the podium at the moment then between these two guys. Sorry, let me get rid of that and bring up the interval time so we can take a look at how the battles are going at the moment. The gaps between P1 and P2 in all of the classes there, at least over 2 seconds in most cases. However, the battle for third still on in a lot of those situations. Noel Brown did get... Oh no, he was already ahead of Linus Colour, wasn't he? It was the 204 chasing him earlier on, and that gap, sadly, for Nils has opened up quite some while. Of course, just over the halfway point of this first race, and Humphrey setting lightning quick times there at the front, 1.6 seconds quicker than his teammates, 7/10 quicker than Maya Sigma in behind. No mistakes so far for the lead pair at the sharp end of the field. And yeah, the battle here, I think this is, yes, it is. It's Robin Noel Brown putting pressure on Mitchell Costas, out of class, of course, and it would probably bode Robin for the best to kind of stay put and gain that extra position when we reverse the top 10 in just 8 minutes from now.
Yeah, we're only going to get another 4 laps here. We're going to finish the race pretty much as soon as the timer hits 0. So if that's what William Humphrey can do from the front of the field, I think we should be expecting 3 9-lap races rather than any 10-lap races here this evening. Means it's short, it's sharp, and points are being awarded on, not the greatest amount of racing, which means you have to get yourself to the front as quickly as you possibly can. Logan McKinsey's done that in the TCR Pros and is able to try and manage this gap back to Andrew McKinley and Jay Corley for the time being. We'll have a great starting position as well with a few of the GT4s fours out of contention, meaning that there's always a sniff that one or two of the TCRs can get involved in that reverse grid for race number 3.
Yeah, of course, that would be something that where did we discuss that again? I think it was Long Beach, where this man had such a great second race that he was only a handful of places. In fact, no, I think he finished in the top 15, but we only had the reverse top 10. And we were saying that if he could repeat that kind of effort in this kind of format, that would be quite something, having a TCR on pole. Not to be at the moment. Logan is inside the top 19 as it stands, and therefore we'll start there again in race 2. And if he can progress up the field into race 3, if a couple of drivers have a few issues, he's not all that far away from the top 15, in fact. But of course, he's got to worry about what's in his mirrors at the moment. That is the Honda of his championship rival, Andrew McKinley. At the moment, doing what he needs to do. But of course, that 96-point deficit, give or take any incoming drop rounds, that might change things. Logan knows, yes, he's leading the race at the moment, but he really needs Andrew to start having some poor results. Of course, since Andrew turned up and arrived driving with us in round 2, he's only been off the podium on one occasion, a second occasion in P2, and since then he's won every single race. So it's been one hell of a turn up so far for the Scotsman. But yeah, Mackenzie doing what he needs to do at the moment with that Honda waiting in the wings, but a 2-second margin, 6 minutes to go. Obviously no mistakes, probably finished like this, but at least he's there or thereabouts, putting pressure on his championship rival. If you can't win, then at least be there for a close second, just to, let him know that you're knocking on the door.
It's always difficult when a new driver joins the championship, especially not in the first race, and really gets involved immediately, right at the sharp end of the field. Gives a lot of thought for the drivers, who maybe have to change their expectations, change who they think they're racing, and their entire picture of the season changes. So it's always difficult for drivers, but it has really been interesting to see how the championships have developed with some of those new faces in, and it's been really good to see that we've got these tight championship battles. We didn't quite see that last season, but so far this season, like in the GT4 AMs, 17 points in the top 3 is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's good news again for Mr. Sarika Desler, of course. Gordon Hales in P6 in class at the moment. He was caught up in that early incident at the exit of turn 1. Now, of course, Huss managed to get away from that initially. Got nearly a 7-second gap down to P2, so he'll be quite comfortable knowing that it's going to be maximum points so far to help extend his championship lead. But Gordon Hales has led the vast majority of this championship, I think, up until this week, actually, Dara. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's been him at the front, at least for the last month or so. So Sarika Desler's turned up, being Mr. Consistent over the last few weeks, and this will certainly add to his confidence coming into it. Hales, a little bit of a knock coming into this week, but still got lots of time to try and recover. And of course, at the start of both of these races, that's when he's got his best opportunity to try and get a few early places, see if he can get on the back of Sarika Desler in the first few laps.
Yeah, maybe the one downside for Hussein at the moment is that his drop round comes from Long Beach, where he picked up 0 points because he didn't attend. So he's got to be careful in that manner, because every single point from here on out is going to count for him. There is no room for error at all. In comparison, Gordon Hales dropped last week, which was 45 points. But, I mean, if Hussein could be winning races like this, it's going to help him no end for that kind of championship aspiration. I think something's happened to Jason Haddington. He's dropped back down the order a touch. I think he fell below Andrew Fellows and then fell quite a ways behind. So let's hope he's okay, but he's not quite in that championship battle at the moment.
Yeah, he did have an issue, but let's see. Oh, this is Jeff Hibbert and Lauren Dunuden. Is that him getting past? Yes, it is. Maybe a slowdown there for Laurens, because I wouldn't expect him to give up that position so easily. But he's got these 3 Mercedes, one in front, one behind, putting pressure at the moment. This is for the top 8. Josh Sparrow is ahead, and he's got Donnelly in behind in that leading Porsche before we get to the AM class. Charlie Stothard, he's had a problem. He managed to get himself up into the top 8 at the moment, which is a pretty good result, all things considered. Managed to go from P40 up to P21, ahead, however, of only 3 other GT4 cars. So it's been a pretty easy ride so far for Charlie, but of course, as we said, got himself inside that top 8, although, is this him going side by side? Yes, it is. Oh, he's disappeared. That's not what you want if you're Dean Sheesby trying to coordinate your run out of that corner. He's gone again. Not the best thing. And the worst part about it, Dara, Charlie probably won't even be aware that this is what other drivers are experiencing at the moment.
No, and that is always the problem for drivers generally, is that they then get told afterwards that, you know, you were blinking all over the screen. And there may be an incident that occurs due to it, and, Dean might turn, or Charlie might turn around and be, saying, "Why did you take me out?" And Charlie, and then Dean shows in the footage and says, "Well, where were you?" And it's never a good feeling. It can never really be penalised either, because, I mean, you can't take out an invisible object, can you? No matter how hard you try. And this is just going to be horrible for Dean right now, because he won't want to hit Charlie, but he just doesn't know where he is. And if he blinks too much, he could appear directly in front of Dean, and, create an error for Sheesby, which, wouldn't particularly be fair, because he wasn't quite expecting it. Inside line, though, whoa!
Yeah, he's going for... Oh, my God. He went for it, thought I got it done, and then there he is, reappearing in front of him. That's, yeah, such a nightmare for Sheesby. Let's not watch that anymore, because Thomas Pugh finally putting a little bit of pressure under Roll Bay. He's going to be stuck around the outside line. We haven't seen this battle since right at the start of the session, of course. Just 1 minute to go then. Does that mean the white flag is out? Probably. Maybe just. We'll soon see when Humphrey crosses the line. That looks a little bit deep, but he has just about got it slowed down. Great racing by these two. Yanis just stepping off the circuit there. Unfortunate, really, but I think that's fine. Technically, he did overtake off the circuit there, I think. But Thomas Pugh is going to get that run, and let's watch on from his perspective. Is he going to be able to put a move in? Of course, we saw him up the inside at 1, around the outside through 9 and 10. Is he going to fancy it on the brakes? Yes, he is, just before the turn, and that's going to be difficult to get it slowed down. These two, this battle will continue on. Marius Ibma is checked out of these two, of course. 6 seconds up the road at the moment. And yeah, it's anyone's game here for who's going to get the final place on the podium. These drivers will be hoping for another lap, but I think it's going to come to an end, possibly this lap. Humphreys is making his way around the final corner. Let's see. I think it is going to be over now, Dara.
Yeah, I think he's just about going to make it to the final couple of corners. Yeah, there we go. The time has hit 0. It's going to be William Humphrey. And again, dominance. He's going to win once again. And he's not even been under pressure again.
Yeah, I know. And this is hopefully not what we come to expect, but it's certainly been the way that it's been so far this season. So William Humphrey extends that run. He's going to start asking me soon what the record is, because at the moment, that's his 10th win in a row. And his 11th win of the season, and at the moment he's in prime position to go ahead and get 2 more by the time the race ends tonight. Marius Simba and then Yanis Olber did get ahead of Thomas Pugh at the line by just 0.3 of a second. Robin Noel Brown finished ahead of Nils Culler, and then John Ludbrook in the AM class. Logan McKenzie, McKinley and Corley, the top 3 in the pros. Sarah Cadesla, Kenyon got past Smith in the end by only 1.5 seconds. That could have been a mistake by Smith at some point there. In fact, these guys are still racing. What am I doing? Let's go and ride on board as they cross the line. Sheesby will share the checkered flag just ahead of Logan McKenzie. Then it's Andrew McKinley and then Jay Corley closely, followed by Jaden Scott, and of course the man inside the top 3 in their class. So these guys, the top 4, finishing inside the top 4 in a slightly different order, but still remaining awfully competitive.
And this is the little calm before the storm of us having to do a frantic run through the results. As there is no break between races 1 and 2. There is a little bit of time between 2 and 3, but it's going to be a very, very quick turnaround for us to have to try and read out all of the names in all of the positions, that's for sure.
Yeah, completely right. So there we go. Sarah Cadesla, Kenyon and Smith the podium in the final class. So much to handle here. Danny Weir, more damage on that front end. I feel like we've seen more often than not the front end of Danny's car missing somewhere around the circuit, and he manages to just dribble over the line there. I wonder if he had a slowdown to serve as he crossed over the line. But a top 4 for Danny is not so bad at all, of course. He is currently in P8 in this series, not having quite as good of a run as he is over on a Thursday night, of course, leading that championship now in the M class, but I'm sure that he will be satisfied with how things turned out for him there.
Yeah, I mean, good races for a few of the drivers, but I think there's going to be another few hoping for a little bit more in race 2, and they may be given a bit more of a chance, of course, with the field getting bunched back up together for the race start.
Well, we're going to be pretty short of time, so let's run through the order very quickly then. It was William Humphrey ahead of Marius Himber and Yannis Olber on the top, on the three on the podium. Thomas Pugh, Mitchell Costas in the top 5. Adam Atherton, Jeremy Ulemans, Joe Shapara, Jeff Hibbert, and Stephen Donnelly, the top 10. Lauren de Ouden will also score points, so everybody in the pro class scoring.
Yeah, great to see that we've got points going out to pretty much everybody. Over in the AM class, of course, it was going to be a win for Robin Earl Brown. Nils Kula came up a little bit short. Those two, of course, in title contention with each other. John Ludbrook was on the podium ahead of Edward Grobe and Luke Bailey. Rob Gregg, Daniel Poole, and Dean Sheesby rounding out the top 8 with the top 10, ended by Charlie Stottard and Matt Stace. Liam Fraser was on the lead lap, so we'll pick up the points, but only 11th for him.
Yeah, sorry to rush through this, everybody, but of course we have this and then a little bit of a grid to get through as well. Back for the TCRs, Logan McKinsey, Andrew McKinley, and Jay Corley taking the podium spots in their class, ahead of Jaden Scotton and James Howarth inside the top 5. A good result for Howarth again, keeping that consistency in check. Max Nevincharny and Scott Malcolm will finish ahead of Anthony Hilton, Kevin Marshall and Alak Iyenga, who had an issue right at the start of the race but did come back out of the pit lane and will take the checkered flag.
And over in the AM category for the TCRs, only the 8 drivers tonight. Sain Sarakadesla was the winner ahead of Martin Kenyon and Rob Smith. Danny Weir and Gordon Hales were in the top 5, with Andrew Fellows also on the lead lap. Jason Haddington on laps down will pick up the points for 7th. Steve Rubino, though, sadly, 5 laps down out of the race, will not score in race number 1. He's got a little bit of work to do in race number 2.
So then, let's take a look quickly at the top 10, of course, in reverse order. John Ludbrook, who finished P10, will start on the front row of the grid in that GT4 AM class. He's not that far ahead of Nils Culler and Robin Noel Brown. He'll share that with Jeremy Ulemans and then Adam Atherton. So that battle will continue for the time being. Then, of course, Culler, Costas and Noel Brown inside the top 6. And then we have that battle between Pugh, Olber, Hibmer and Humphrey. It'll be interesting to see Humphrey trying to take over some of these guys after such a dominant display in that first race. Let's see, Dara, how many he can dispatch by the time we reach the line after this opening lap. Something tells me Olber won't make it too difficult for him, but Hibmer might know that it's now or never if he wants to stay in front of of Humphrey. But of course, they'll all want to move forward in this one. We've got the guys with the front of the field starting just a little bit further into that mid-pack, and we give the opportunity now to John Ludbrook to lead us away off the line, and he's going pretty quick at the moment, and I think he's gone. Oh, yeah, I think he has gone. He hasn't quite nailed the throttle, and that's probably going to cause a little bit of confusion further down the pack, but nonetheless, Ludbrook gets us underway, and he's already got pressure on the inside from Adam Atherton. Jeremy Ulemans swings it around the outside. Edward Grobe and Laurens de Ouden in those two white and orange Mercedes, putting a little bit of pressure on Nils Culler then, and it's a very tight battle between these two Porsches heading through turns 3, 4 and 5. The leader's getting through well. Humphrey is down 1 place to Edward Grobe, so not the start that he would have liked. Charlie Stothard is round and he's in the barrier. I wonder if that had something to do with his connection. Dean Sheesby is also off the road there, and there's another MRC. Is that Liam Fraser again? Liam Fraser off, and more TCR drama at the back. Yet another pretty untidy start for the guys toward the back of the field.
Yeah, I do. I was looking at the timing tower with Stottard and Sheesby. They were right next to each other, and then both off at the same corner. Correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, but it did look like something may have happened. A long way back, though, is this battle. Oh no, so this is turn 11. Turn 11 looks like turn 1. I got confused there for a second. But Culler and Ludbrook fighting it out. Ludbrook is just side by side, of course. Jeremy Ulemans leading the way overall, as we see Culler having the inside line, Ludbrook having the outside line. I think John's just about going to break later, or maybe Culler is, or maybe John is, as they work their way through. Jeremy goes round, avoid him at all costs, because that might create a bit of a crash. It does.
Yeah, it does. That was very on. He's lost his rear wing there for good measure. Sadly, Frulemans was doing so well to take Ludbrook off the line, and then it's all come undone by the time they reach turn 13, or turn 12 even. When he spins, he's got damage front and rear there. So Luke Bailey, he's done well off the start. He's up 7 places overall. He's just let the car of William Humphrey through, and then it's Yanis Olber. So Humphrey now in P2 in class, P5 on the road. So losing a place in the first sector hasn't really impacted him there in sectors 2 and 3. He's gained it all back and then some up into P5. He's got his eyes set on Thomas Pugh, the leading Axis Sim Sports car there, who's just in shot ahead of Noel Brown. So it's a lot for these guys to deal with. Culler leads the field. Noel Brown 4 places back from him. Thomas Pugh leading the pro class. Humphrey just 2 cars back from him. So race leaders under pressure then within drivers inside the top 5. Ullemans, Costas and Atherton out of the race and into the pit lane alongside Poole, Stothard and Hales at the start of the race.
Yeah, not really what you want to be seeing, but some drivers having, not really electing to, but having to make that trip down pit road. Close battles at the front of the field as well, though, as Gula does hold the advantage. Patchwork, though, isn't it, really, of pros and AMs at the moment at the front of the field. Jay Corley in the top 15 in the TCRs. At the moment, we've got 3 TCRs in that top 15. That could be interesting if it was to say as it is. I think there's quite a few GT4s that are running around that battle, though, who may be able to work their way through. But for the time being, the cream's on for Logan McKenzie to be on pole.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was interested to see where they were, of course. 3 of them inside the top 15. It's a shame that they can't really do anything skill-wise to stay where they are. For example, in every sector of the circuit, really, under braking, in the corners and in the straight line, those GT4 cars are, of course, superior. Lawrence and Alden already demoting Jay outside of that reverse grid order. Joe Sparrow will be next. There he goes up the inside, down the run toward turn 11. Logan McKenzie is currently in P13. Again, I'm so optimistic for one of these guys at some point during the season to get themselves on the front row of the grid, if possible. I think it would be that, wouldn't it, Dara? We couldn't expect them to get inside the top 15. It probably would be P15 at best. But hey, what a race that would be to start at the front of the entire field. It's on at the moment for McKenzie, but with 15 minutes to go here, something tells me that those GT4 cars might just outpace him ever so slightly by the time we reach the checkered.
You'd think. We don't necessarily know, of course, but yeah, I think that's probably a fair assumption to make in this race. Yeah, definitely difficult for the TCRs to hang on, especially when there are GT4s coming back through, whether they've had issues in this race or had issues in the last race and had to start, therefore, towards the back of the field. But at the front of the field, some drivers, of course, are trying to hold on to the positions or gain away from the positions that they've got. William Humphrey's in P4, but he's trying to gain to P3. He doesn't really need to get up to the top 2. Could very much happily stay P3. A, gives him a better starting position for race 3, and B, doesn't really lose many points if he stays in the top 3. So I think that'll be the aim for him. You know, Neil Scooter and John Ludbrook may fight it out amongst themselves, but with the pace of William, would not be surprised if in just a couple of laps he's right at the front of the field anyway. Yeah,
this is what happened at the race start. Doesn't look like, well, there's a little bit of blinking there. There was a little bit of contact with Shispi earlier, and then Charlie has lost it on his own, and then Sparrow has gone straight into the back of Shispi, and they've both, little scrape there on the front left, but nothing too significant. They can get themselves going, and then another car joined them. I think that might have been Hilton coming through toward the end, or perhaps Liam Fraser. It seems, though, those guys just getting a little bit caught out by those curbs, which is, of course, one of the trickiest things to get right on this circuit. And yeah, that was all the action that we saw at the front, at the start of the race. Since then, though, it's all been pretty good. Poole and Haddington have had an issue, and of course, Ullemans had that spin. All Bears just got past Robin Noel Brown, who's bump drafting him down toward turn 12, but will back out by the time they reach that corner. But of course, he's got to be conscious of Luke Bailey here. A new look livery for the KXR driver. He's kind of got rid of that gold look. He's gone for the blue and white now, I must say. A very striking livery for the 218, and he will fancy his chances at getting on the back of Robin Noel Brown to get himself on the podium. Nils Culler and John Ludbrook still leading the field, while Pugh and Humphrey battle away for the lead in their class, but it's good to see. Let's see how long the AM drivers can stay at the sharp end of the stick.
Yeah, it's nice. It is nice to kind of see that balance, isn't it, between the pros and the AMs in these races. The reverse grids really do help with that. I mean that there is a lot of interclass battling, which is always fantastic to see. Still not too close to the end of this race either, so a lot still to be decided. Looking forward to seeing how at the start of race 3, these battles will either continue or, of course, have a little bit more spice to them, maybe with a couple of TCRs involved as well. Oh, it's a late move. Humphrey's going to get it done though, and Thomas Pugh's going to fight it, but I mean, there's nothing he can do. Humphrey, opportunistic move, smartly done, no contact, and that's how you take the lead of your class, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I must say, it's what I love to see when drivers do what Thomas did just there. He saw Humphrey coming, and instead of continuing on that line, he thought, well, he's got the overlap here, and he's going to be there, so let's not turn in. Actively turning out of the corner to avoid, well, maybe not, inevitable contact. I think they probably would have been able to get through. Humphrey did get it slowed down by the time they reached the apex, but it's nice to see that sort of awareness, let's say, from another driver. He's lost the lead of his class, but he hasn't minded all the while. I think he would rather just sit pretty in P2 rather than risking contact with Humphrey ahead, and he's looking to go up the inside of John Ludbrook, who won't be best pleased. Again, he'll be satisfied in P2 at the moment, but what he won't like is the fact that he's now got 2 cars in between him and Nils Culler, who leads the field just there. He'll soon be taken, I'm sure, by Humphrey, as that clean air for all these Porsches just opens up a little bit slightly as we approach the halfway point already in this second race. Feels like it was quite a frantic start there. Mario Sidma is getting past the Class P5, both of these guys actually, in their respective classes, and Logan McKenzie still inside the top 15. Can you believe it?
I'd only just been able to update the end of the standings after race number 1. I can tell you William Humphrey's got to 600 points out of a possible 600 up to this point. Robin O'Brown's taken the lead for the time being in the GT4 Rams by 1 point, but at the moment that would then change back round if Nils Culler was to win this race. Extension of the lead, well, actually closing of the lead in the TCR Pros with McKinsey winning and McKinley coming second, then an extension of the lead for Sarah Kadesla in the TCR AM category. And with only 8 drivers, any points or any finish is good points for them. I think sadly for Haddington and Rubino, they are not picking up many at all. These guys are battling it out there into the final corner. Rob Gregg, Edward, it's not even Edward Grove at the moment, it's Rob Gregg along with a couple of the pro drivers who are fighting. Edward Grove may be involved in this, he is indeed. But the timing page just needs to update a little bit. There it goes. And Greg now just behind the 293.
Yeah, great little battle between these three, of course. One of these drivers out of class, that's Jeff Hibbert in the middle at the moment, the 375, putting his nose in between the drivers fighting for the top 5 in that AM class. And here comes Humphrey. It's a difficult place to try and get past through turn 10. He is going to get a run though. That could allow Pugh to get through. Sorry, that wasn't turn 10. This is now turn 10. As they come up and over the crest, Humphrey darting from left to right. Is he going to fancy his chances up the inside? I would doubt that Himber will that Nils Culler will defend that one too hard. Is Pugh going to try and sneak through? In fact, look at that, attempting it around the outside is the 204, not getting out the way lightly. Ludbrook on the back of Pugh as well, so we've got 2 battles going on here out of the class for the lead of both races. This is great racing with only 9.5 minutes to go. Fingers crossed this continues all the way. We don't like it really when these guys just get out of the way for one another. Why not get your elbows out? Humphrey has got through. That's not great news for Thomas Pugh, while these guys in front and behind him battling for their win in class. And then Yanis Bears joined the party.
It's getting a little bit busy down here at this part of the circuit as Yanis is trying to look for a move. Thomas Pugh to the inside, trying to make his way through on Nils Culler. There's contact. Culler's gone into John Ludbrook, and Yanis is going to find a way through. John Ludbrook looks like he's going to have the outside line and the position momentarily, but Culler back up the inside, has the much better run, has the position for the lead again, checks up though. Yanis gets close, and this isn't really when you want to be for Yanis Albert. Outside line into the penultimate corner. He may be able to sweep around the outside. He will, of 1, of 2, if he keeps on the circuit, just about. What a move that is from Yanis Albert.
Yeah, so close. Culler is going to fight it back into the final corner, but is he going to be able to go around the outside again? Great defensive driving, I must say, by Culler. A slight mistake in the run into that final sector, but all in all, he's done very well over the last 10 or so corners to defend from these pro drivers, of course. Yanis knows that he needs to get past, and a little bit of bumping there, of course. Yanis can dictate the entry to that corner if he wishes Nils to stay on a tighter line. Culler had a different idea, fancied getting over to that preferred racing line. Aubert is not the one to back out of this. He'll be feisty, and he hasn't. He's got around the outside, then up the inside, and then ahead of that Porsche, and all the while that's allowing Ludbrook to get back in with into this battle here. He's looking around the outside, hasn't quite got the grip there, and now Norbert Brown sniffed him up the outside. This is great between the top three. In both of these classes, it could go any which way in the next 7.5 minutes. Noel Brown will say thank you very much. I don't think his teammate's going to have too much to say about that one. There might be more chance for Noel Brown to try and put some pressure on Nils Culler if he has the pace for it.
The one thing they're going to have to remember, though, is the fact that there is a race 3 coming up, that the grid is set by the end result of this race. They can't afford, really, to get themselves too heavily involved or, you know, damaged in any way by what we're seeing, because if there's any kind of damage that is picked up, then it's going to be, or a position loss, even a spin, it's going to be heavily damaging for their evening, maybe even for their championship as well. Of course, drop rounds on the horizon. I don't think anybody wants to be dropping around tonight with only 40 cars when we started the season with about 50, 55 on the grid. 40 now. Less drivers mean more chance for bigger points, and I think any kind of mistake now is going to be devastating for some of these drivers.
Yeah, now speaking about what's devastating, that is now Logan McKenzie just outside the top 15, P16 now, with Liam Fraser getting past him in that Mercedes. Of course, as we said all the time, it's a very difficult thing for any of these cars to do that, but with just 6 minutes to go, Logan might have fancied it. It's still on, of course, with all the battles that are going on, from Yanis Aubert down to Luke Bailey, who's now involved in that battle. Still opportunities for someone to find the barrier and for Logan to pick up 1 or 2 positions. We won't put too much pressure on that happening, because as we said, it's quite unlikely. Thomas Pugh setting the fastest lap time of the race so far, half a tenth quicker than what Humphrey has been able to muster so far in this session. But sadly, not too much going on for these TCR drivers. This guy got GT4s in front and behind. Now alongside, up goes the Porsche. Oh my god, that was so close to contact. The Mercedes, both of them picking up a 1x there. The Mercedes of, that's Adam Atherton, running so far off the circuit. Yeah, I was going to say, sadly, pretty big gaps between all of the guys in the TCRs, and the guys that are battling out on the track aren't in the same class. Who's that in the student driver liveries? That's Scott Malcolm. Yeah, that's quite a funny livery. That's a new one for him, for the Lumen car, who says, have it back. That is the pro driver getting himself back past the one car of Kenyon, who's going to bump draft him all the way down the line. Of course, he is making contact with the car there, actually, and he's going to just back out. Is he going to dive up the inside, or is he going to let the pro driver get away the run through Sector 1?
Yeah, let's see. Kenyon just sticking it in behind for the time being, with 3 laps left of this race to run, trying to pick away left, right. And we're ready to go for the number 1 driver, but he will try and stay in the battle, stay in the fight, maybe drag himself a little bit closer to Danny Weir, who's having a good night in that number 26. Cooler having to fight with Ludbrook again. Ludbrook realised that the door was being heavily shown to him and backs out. Oh, that's sorry, Robin L. Brown realising that the door is being heavily shut on him. Of course, Noel Brown and Ludbrook being teammates. Similar liveries, but at least their names are on the car. That is always a useful feature, and something I probably should have noticed quicker than I did. Inside line, though, that's one of the pro drivers. It's going to be the 3-4 of Marius Hidmer up the inside, but here comes Robin O'Brien back up the inside at the triple right. So clearly, ding-dong battling happening. Maybe not for any more points in this race, but for Hidmer, he wants to try and get up to Yanis Aubert, and he needs to get through on these guys immediately if he's going to do so.
Yeah, and of course, Noel Brown will not want the likes of Hidmer getting up on his back. He needs to stay with Nils Culler, of course. There goes the Porsche. Is he going to overshoot it? No, he just get it slowed down, but the run out of the corner so much more effective for the 2-2-1, who's got the inside line as well, so he will lead this pairing through the first corner. John Ludbrook just in behind. He might fancy his chances at a swinging move around the outside. Doesn't want to do too much to impact his teammate, but of course he's got his own race to run. That is Hidmer up now past P2 in the AM class, inside the top 4. Doesn't look like Noel Brown's going to have the pace to catch up with Culler at this point. The gaps toward the front of the field starting to spread out a little bit. Humphrey only 1.2 seconds clear this time. Not quite the easy run that he had in race 1, but with only 2 laps to go, you'd like to think that Humphrey will have enough in the tank to hold on in front of Thomas Pugh and extend to 11 wins in a row, which would be absolutely crazy if he can pull that off. For the time being though, this is the closest battle that we have. Teammates with Luke Bailey in behind. He's gone quietly about his business so far tonight, but could be in with a chance of a podium if these two come together.
Absolutely so, and I think, you know, Luke may be hoping that that would be happening. I know he thinks it's unlikely because they're teammates, and of course, drivers, you know, you don't necessarily want to see your rivals taken out. You want to make the moves yourselves, but you're not going to say no to some free points, are you? And I think Luke Bailey would love that to happen towards the end of this race. Of course, he's looking like he's going to be in a good starting position for race number 2 as well, and involved in the battle with the front guys in his class. He will have the likes of Grove, Greg, and Liam Fraser to get through. So it doesn't look like we're going to have any of those TCRs in the reverse grid. But it's really critical, I think, for moves to be made now. Of course, we're going to have another lap after this one. Yeah, inside lap for Luke Bailey on Robin Ulbrow. Or on John Ulbrow gets that one done. But with only one more lap to go, you don't want to be leaving it on the long finger. Look at Stephen Donnelly through the middle. Yeah,
that was opportunistic if I've ever seen it. And is he going to be able to surprise the driver here? Of course, Donnelly in the pro class, so he hasn't picked up any points in that move. But look at that, through the middle of one, around the outside, and then he gets it stuck. Is Ludbrook going to fight that one back? No, he's not. Let's watch that again from the perspective of Donnelly, because what a move that was. Opportunistic as those two make contact. Gets it slowed down, tucked in nicely, foot to the floor, splits the two of them into the entry of the corner, and then does he switch it back? Yes, he does. Comes to the inside to then pick up the outside line through the penultimate corner. What a move that was by the 330.
I think that's going to be one that he's going to be a little bit proud of, to say the least. I'm really good to see him up, well, now into PA. He's just had Luke Bailey still, as he can't quite get through on Stephen Donnelly yet, and Luke Bailey still trying to pick a way through. Wanted to note that Liam Fraser currently on pole position for race number 3, and if he's able to get away at the front of the field, he's shown some great pace of late. That could be a driver to keep an eye out for the rest of that one. Donnelly still trying to pick a way through. Much better exit through turn 9 and into turn 10 compared to John Ludbrook. Is he going to send it at the final? Oh, on the final lap into the final hairpin.
Let's watch on. He might, you know, he's not quite going to have the overlap. It would be wise to back out, but Ludbrook has left an awful lot of room for the JSD machine to get on through, and he won't mind that too much, of course. That's one position gained at the start of the feature race and no points dropped, so a little bit of strategy on display there from the man who led the field at the start of this race. Is he going to try and go around the outside? That would be a little bit risky. He has got his nose up, but the Mercedes, last of the two late breakers, gets himself back ahead and will probably stay ahead all the while. Once again, here's William Humphrey. This time though, not as comfortable. I wonder if this battle can continue between these two. Thomas has had great pace tonight, and of course so many cars. It'll be 15 cars for these guys to get through in this upcoming race, and yeah, these two might fancy helping each other out a little bit, trying to carve through that traffic. As they round the final corner then, the win streak continues. The form that this man's in, it's hard to imagine that form will ever stop, to be honest. He had a great season last season, he's had a great first half of this season, and he starts the second half of the season about, well, in fact, as good as you can imagine. That's maximum points for the 398 of William Humphrey, once again ahead of Thomas Pugh and Yannis Olber. It's another two men on the podium for the GlassTech DXT team. Marius Hidmer happy with that one. Nils Culler closely ahead of Robin Noel Brown. Those two will continue their championship battle, of course. Noel Brown taking that lead in the championship earlier on, but coming into tonight just 4 points the difference. Logan McKenzie in the end finished outside the top 15 but inside the top 20, and he will take to the line for another P1 finish here around the Circuit of the Americas ahead of Andrew McKinley. Not a bad session for him so far either, sharing the positions so far, these two. Likewise for Jay Corley, likewise for Jaden Scotton, and likewise for James Howard, the top 5 of race 1, finishing I think in the same order in race 2.
Yeah, and a bit of a note on William Humphrey. Would you believe me if I told you that after race 1, he held a 39-point advantage at the lead of the championship? Um, because that's what he did. Ben Smith not being here tonight meant that obviously he could pick up his points from the previous rounds, and not being by making this week his drop round, which immediately closed him up in the championship. William Humphrey's just gaining away. That gap, of course, will get to 89 points now that he's won the race, and will likely get well over 100 by the end of race 3. But it just goes to show that even if he's won 12 races this season, it's not necessarily the most comfortable of the championships. He still won't have as big of a championship lead as Andrew McKinley does, and he's won only, just about half of the races so far this season in the class. So he's on his toes either way, and William Humphrey just doing what he does best and winning and winning again.
Yeah, continues that incredible run. And of course, I was looking there, Andrew Fellows finishing P35 on the road, but P5 in class. One of the last men to cross the line. But of course, when you have so many classes on a pretty, not small grid by any means, but of course, 4 classes, when not everybody in that class turns up, you don't have to have that much of a strong performance to really bring home the points. So, not the best finishing position for Fellows on the circuit, but top 5 is some great points to bring home. And of course, I think only a handful of those guys would have finished the session, with a couple of them down there in the pit lane. So then, let's run through the order. We've got a little bit more time, thankfully, to run through the race 2 results. And we'll start, as always, with the GT4 Pro Class. So, normal service, as we saw earlier, William Humphrey converting yet another 50 points to add to his tally, and of course, the team's tally in their hunt to take the lead in that championship, ahead of Thomas Pugh, his team, also in that fight. Jonas Aubert joins them on the podium once again, ahead of Mari Sidma and Stephen Donnelly inside the top 5. It's going to be Jeff Hibbert, who finishes in P6, ahead of Josh Barra and Lawrence Den Ouden. And it'll be Adam Atherton and Jeremy Olemans in the top 10. Mitchell Costas, not the best result he's had so far this season. That's good enough for P11. And I was just going to see, he's not on my sheet. I can't see if that's his worst result, but he's joined a couple of weeks ago and he's been there or thereabouts every week. It's his what?
Tied worst result.
It's tied worst. Well, okay, he hasn't been yet. He's been there or thereabouts. And everybody finishing on the lead lap, which is good. And everyone's scoring points once again.
Yeah, I finish in race 3. Should see him up into the top 12 in the championship as well, which would be good for him. In the AM category, it was Niels Kula who ended up winning the race and retook the championship lead once again. And he retook it ahead of Robin Noel Brown, who finished in P2. Those two are only going to be separated by 4 points again going into this third race, and Noel Brown will have the slight advantage with the grid positioning. John Ludbrook, podium again for him, 3rd in a row in his Kamei GP2 car. Luke Bailey finishing in 4th ahead of Rob Gregg, who was a little bit further back. He had to hold off Edouard Grobe to secure his top 5, with Liam Fraser and Matt Stace inside the top 8. Dean Sheesby with 9th ahead of Daniel Paul, who was 2 laps down. I doubt Daniel's going to be able to pick up his points, being 2 laps down. That's pretty much, 75% only completed. Charlie Sottard out of the race on the opening lap, definitely won't get his points, and he will go down as a DNF tonight.
Yeah, all that hard work that Charlie did in the opening round undone somewhat there, because it seems like he'll start once again right down the back, toward the back of the grid. So that optimism that we had for him at the start of the session, sadly, it doesn't look like it's going to come to fruition on this occasion, but that's okay. TCR's up next then, with the Pro Class. First, as always, it's Logan McKenzie who won out once again. That's 2 from 2 for him tonight, ahead of the championship rival Andrew McKinley. And Jay Corley, as we said, the top 5, I think, staying the same as what we got earlier tonight. It's Corley, then Scott, and then Howarth, ahead of Hilton and Iyenga inside the top 7. Max Nevenchani, Scott Malcolm, and Kevin Marshallsay inside the top 10. Nice round number for the guys in that Pro Class once again, all finishing in a pretty strong position.
And finally, over in the TCR AMs, it was Hussein Saragadesla who ended up winning the race, extending that championship lead and what is a very good night for him. Danny Weir, P2 for the DX team, Motorsports team, picked up a 2-3 as Martin Kenyon followed him through to stand on the bottom step. Rob Smith and Andrew Fellows, both on the lead lap, both will score well. Gordon Hales was a lap down, but will still pick up his points, and the South African will keep himself in contention in the championship due to that. Haddington and Rubino, not a good day for them so far. Neither of them finished the race, neither of them scoring any points at all.
Well, there you go. So, as we said, sort of smaller classes in this field, lots of opportunity to score some points, but sadly for some of these guys, even when there's only 6 scorers, yeah, if you don't have a good start to the race, pick up damage, and you can end up out of the session. And yeah, it's not always possible to score any of those points. So then, we've timed that pretty well, because there's only about 10 seconds to go in this warm-up session. And then we'll take you through the grid for the final race. If you bear with me for just 10 seconds, Sarah, I'll be right back.
It's going to be an exciting way to round out the evening. 20 minutes again worth of racing. Championships continue to evolve as we work our way through the evening. A few drivers are going to be having to be trying to avoid those drop rounds to give themselves a little bit of a chance into race number 3. But as we load towards the grid, it's going to be really interesting to see how Liam Fraser can get away from the front. Of course, not had the easiest night, but this should be slightly easier starting from right at the front of the grid.
Go on, Dara, you can run us through this one if you'd like. We've got time to go through pretty much the whole field, if you would like to do that, of course.
Well, we'll see how far we get. Liam Fraser, though, he will lead us to the green flag from the AM class. Lawrence Den Ouden, I should say, will start P2, and he will lead the pro class into this race. Joe Sparrow and Jeff Hibbard, 2nd and 3rd in the class, and will be on the 2nd row. Edward Grobe, Rob Gregg, Luke Bailey, and John Ludbrug, a little bit of a clump of AM drivers, make up rows 3 and 4, with the Irishman Donnelly and the Brit Robin Noel Brown rounding out our top 10 in this race. Niels Kula was 5th in race 2, which means he's 11th on the grid. Hibmer, Albert, and Thomas Pugh, 12th, 13th, and 14th. They will all start just ahead of serial race winner and runaway championship leader William Humphrey, who starts from 15th. Matt Stace was just on the outside looking in to that reverse grid. Finished P16 in race 2, will start P16. He's alongside William Humphrey. Dean Sheesby and Adam Atherton are on row 9 before Jeremy Orlemans rounds out the leading group of GT4s before we start to see a bit of a mix with the TCRs. Logan McKinsey is that first TCR. The American finds himself in P20 ahead of Mitchell Costas, who is, of course, a GT4 Pro. McKinley, Cooley, Scotton, and Hayworth, 22nd through 25th, all TCR Pros ahead of the leading TCR AM, Sainz Arkadesla, who starts at the back end of row 13. Anthony Hilton and Alok Iyengar will be on row 14 ahead of Danny Weir, and Max Nevinciani, the Brit and the Portuguese driver, round out our top 30. Scott Malcolm and Martin Kenyon, Rob Smith and Kevin Marshall pick up rows 16 and 17. Fellows and Hales from row 18. And the grid is rounded out by Daniel Poole, Jason Haddington, Charlie Stottard, and Steve Rubino. 40 drivers, 20 minutes on the clock, Joe. It's going to be a good way to end out the night, that's for sure.
I think you're totally right there, Dara, and we've got a little bit of a mix at the front of the field, of course. Liam Fraser potentially in some unfamiliar territory as he leads away the pack, coming around the final few corners now. I think notable drivers to watch, definitely Joe Sparrow up there inside the top 3. He will fancy holding on to as many of those points as he can. A driver that's definitely bold sometimes in his approach. He will start ahead of Jeff Hibbert, who we haven't seen too much of in the past, but it'll be interesting to see how these two Mercedes drop the hammer off the line. Of course, keep your eye out down there for the likes of Owlbear, Pugh and Humphrey. See how many positions they pick up by the time, for example, we reach maybe turn 11, turn 12 during the first half of the lap. But it will be over to Liam Fraser, and you can take this one away, Dara.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what Liam Fraser can do. Can he get a win again and really pick up his momentum that he had the last couple of weeks in the AM class? We will wait and see. Den Ouden wouldn't mind getting a good result in his pro championship aspirations. We run up to the line. When does the green flag drop? Liam Fraser has the prerogative. Off he goes, and we're racing 20 minutes on the clock to round out the night here at the Circuit of the Americas. Round 6 of the season, still in the mid-phase, but still a really important race for all of these drivers to pick up points. Chaos down into turn 1, 3, 4, maybe even nearly 5 wide in the background as they make their way through. Cars in the air, though, as that is going to be Hidma going around. A couple of cars on the inside as well. Niels Kula, one of those, dropping all the way down the order. And I think Luke Bailey as well, you can see on the right-hand side off the road. John Lubrock will join them as well. Dramatic start, but calm at the front of the field. Fraser got away nicely.
Yeah, it was a good start toward the front. Same can't be said for the guys at the back, sadly. That front left tyre of Lubrock had seen better days. It didn't even look like it was moving as he rejoined the circuit there. And someone else is off. I think that's Edouard Grove there in the Mercedes in the barrier on the right-hand side of the circuit. Donnelly looking and fancying his chances around the outside. There was a wobble there for Jeff Hibbert, I believe, in the Mercedes up toward the front. Alok Iyengar has had an issue. He is down and out once again. John Lubrock resetting back to the pit lane. Luke Bailey recovering in a cluster of those TCR cars, and that's Charlie Stothard. His night is over again. Race 1 was quite good, but race 2 and race 3 a disaster for the KXR driver in the opening lap on both occasions. Liam Fraser has got away well. Joe Sparrow has managed to get away from Lawrence and Alden into P2. As we said, once he's there, he won't fancy giving that one up. Here is Humphrey, Allbear and Pugh, the leading 3, with Donnelly in between them at the moment. Humphrey's in P8. Allbear's just been taken actually up the inside there by Stephen Donnelly. Thomas Pugh, could this be his opportunity? Is a spinning that's Lawrence and Alden, who was in P3 when we last left him. He's off and round the circuit. Everyone getting promoted one more place. And yeah, Thomas Pugh, he's got a best opportunity of the night to try and keep up with William Humphrey, but he might have just missed out on his opportunity.
Yeah, for William Humphrey to be up into P6 already means that he's going to pretty much back himself to get the win anyway. Bear trying to get through on Rob Gregg. Humphrey's got through on Rob Gregg, both around the outside of the penultimate corner, and they made that look very, very easy indeed. Here comes Thomas Pugh to try and overtake the 225, and the McLaren is going backwards faster than you could imagine. A little bit of a slide there from Thomas Pugh keeps Rob Gregg alive, and here comes Stephen Donnelly. He's going to appear on the right-hand side. There he is in that green and grey car. He's looking for the move, and maybe on both of them here.
Yeah, it's a great cluster early doors. Here it's 2x2, maybe 3 wide into turn 1 around the outside. That was always going to happen. Rob Gregg did not leave the room there on the inside, sorry. And sadly, Thomas Pugh had nowhere to go there. That's going to cause a little bit of a bunch up further down the field. A flash of the headlights by Matt Stace as Jeremy Earlemans and Lawrence and Alden get their way through. Seems like it's quite calm at the moment for these leading 3 TCR drivers. McKinsey leads Corley, leading McKinley. So the 2 teammates there of Team Shelter have managed to get ahead of the Lumen Motorsports driver. Let's see if these guys can work together to keep him there. Up the inside he goes. It could be over already. The inside will become the outside line for McKinley, who does look like he's got the grip once again to the inside line. What a move this will be for the number 152 if he can make it stick, and he has, you know. Great set of corners there by Andrew McKinley, who can now look to put pressure on his championship rival. He cannot let him win 3 from 3 tonight. He's done that earlier in the season, but sadly Jay Corley hasn't been able to put up that much of a fight to help his teammate out, and he's kind of let him up with the clutches of this driver ahead.
Yeah, you don't really want to be giving yourself too much work to do in the final race. I mean, of course, there is always that added element of there is nothing else riding on this race. Once you finish this race, you're done for the evening and nothing really matters until we get to qualifying next week. So you really can chuck it up the inside and risk it a little bit more because you're not having to worry about ruining possibly your races later on in the evening. But down the inside, Jeff Hibbard and Thomas Pugh will go. Pugh around the outside, he loops it all the way around. He'll have the inside line for the triple right-hander, and Thomas Pugh gets it done onto what is currently P4 in that Pro Class, looking to try and get towards the podium. The only issue is you've got Allbear and Humphrey on there at the moment, and they're a difficult duo to try and get through on.
Yeah, Yannis Allbear's, of course, let his teammate through to continue that charge to Sparrow in that green Porsche, just leaving the picture. So let's take a look at that live distance there. You can just see that blimp up further down toward the run into turn 1. And of course, he'll fancy his chances to get past Liam Fraser. What a start he's had at the front for the Moonshiners, I believe. He has 6 cars separating him and his class rival of Robin Noel Brown, who's got Dean Shisby for company at the moment. So keep an eye on that gap at the moment. 2 seconds between Humphrey and Sparrow as things stand. Yannis Allbear will be there for protection in behind the 398, but I doubt will mount any sort of attack. And as for the TCRs, things settling down. Marius Hibmer has just recovered and got past Anthony Hilton once again, but it seems like these TCRs spread out quite quickly in the start of this session. Let's take a look at the live timings there. Well, in fact, both classes really have spread out quite drastically, but a good little battle here for the final spot on the podium and for the final spot inside the top 6 in the TCR Pro class.
Yeah, it's nice to see that there's a couple of battles still ongoing. I think a few of these drivers won't mind the fact that there aren't many battles, notably Logan McKinsey and Hussein Sarkadesla, as they're having some fantastic evenings for their championship aspirations. Still a few laps left for it to change, though. Hayworth behind a couple of drivers. Cooley and Scott may start fighting soon. Stephen Donnelly is fighting, that's for sure. He's fighting with Adam Atherton at the moment as they run their way down in towards turn 12. Atherton with the inside line. Donnelly on the outside line may get a little bit boxed in with the driver in front. Nice tight line and nicely choreographed from Adam Atherton in that all-black livery, but it's not going to be able to work out for him because Donnelly's back down the inside at 13. And he retakes position. Ding-dong battles that you get here at COTA really do show why I do think this track is underrated for racing.
Yeah, I would totally agree. One of my favourites to come to the run through that first sector, personally, one of my favourites would probably, in a sort of dream circuit, that would probably go in there. It would be a close finish between that and Sector 1 at Suzuka. The more I think about it, Suzuka would probably have to take the cake on that one, but still, nonetheless, very similar in characteristics, but I think a little bit more classic over there on the other side of the world. But not so bad for these guys at the start of the session. That gap has massively come down at the front of the field, and in fact, William Humphrey is going to fancy his chances around the outside. Is he going to go for the switchback here on the Porsche? Yes, he is. Gets the brake slammed on. He is going to get the launch out of the corner. Sparrow is going to look to defend, and Humphrey, well, I mean, Sparrow saw him coming and kind of turned to the right a little bit there. Humphrey wisely backed out of that one, and he will go for that move again. As we said, Sparrow not somebody who's scared of getting his elbows out, not scared of sort of, you know, getting the mist into his opposition. And is Humphrey going to think about it up the inside here again? Yes, he is. And they've made contact. And I'm not sure Sparrow is still there. Contact made in the making of that move. Be interesting to see how Sparrow handles this now, because he's got Aubert putting him under pressure next, and it looks as though he's going to try and move around the outside here.
Yeah, let's see how this one develops. Not too much longer in the race now, and moves are going to have to be sorted in the next couple of minutes. Really interesting to see these guys battling it out, but Sparrow just about holding on. This is what we saw off the start, and this is how Humphrey gained all the positions. Where does he pick his way through? Up to turn 1. There's 3, 4 wide. Does he just go through the middle? He does. Cars go wide off the circuit around him. And then to the left. So to the right and to the left, they all go off, and he just drives through the middle as if nothing's happening. That's the kind of luck you need, isn't it, if you're going to win this many races in a row?
Oh, you're totally right, and that was kind of what I was looking out for, just to see how it looked from him. I think he's going to be able to get past this Cammy machine as well. Not going to ride on board for too long, but I'd be interested to see how he got inside that top 6 so quickly. There it is, and there's another one off. There you go. So that is all in all probably the 6 or 7 places that Humphrey gained in the first couple of corners. That's a stricken McLaren who was going to struggle a little bit, and his teammate there had to adjust to avoid Aubert early on. Thankfully, they both got through there in the end. Side by side for Marius Hibmer and Matt Stace, who's up the inside. Is that Matt Stace? Not quite sure. Mitchell Costas and Marius Hibmer, should I say, not Matt Stace. Same livery for the two drivers inside the Flatline Racing red team. Looking to get the switch back there. Took a little bit too much curb, did Marius. That hasn't quite helped his run through toward the penultimate corner. And Joe Sparrow has also been taken by Thomas Pugh all the while toward the front. So it was a good battle for the first half of that race, but now you might just have to settle for P4 in the end.
Yeah, difficult really to move forward from here with so little time left on the clock now. But let's see what happened for Thomas Pugh. Inside, outside. Is he looking for the move? He's gone to the outside. I thought maybe he would dive late to the inside. But it's just going to be a move on the outside. Pretty much let through. No fight given whatsoever. And that's probably the easiest move you could ask for, really. I don't think it gets better than that, to be honest.
We've got a good pack. Well, not a good pack in terms of type racing, but the top guys in the pro class from 1 through P7 all sharing these circuits, so no interruptions for those guys at the moment. Jaden Scotton has got up past Jake Corley, so he takes that final place on the podium as things stand. Sarika Desler leading the way in the AM class, just off the back of that top 7 pack. They've got Max Nevincharny in between them, and then it's Nils Culler. Has he had an incident? I think he has. Nils Culler here, all the way down in P26 overall. P6 in class, not the worst thing, but Robin Noah Brown will certainly be aware of that, and he'll certainly be sort of keeping his cards close to his chest. In fact, here it is for Nils. Let's see what went wrong. He's got Martin Kenyon, I think that is, ahead of him. Yes, it is. Is he going to make a move into the final corner? Is he going to get turned in on? No, he didn't get turned in on. He just didn't get it slowed down, sadly. And he's got himself off the circuit and going again. That wouldn't have cost him all the positions that he's lost. So I wonder if something's happened to him earlier on. Maybe he was caught up right at the start. Here's another one. So it's been a handful of incidents for the Championship Challenger at the moment. And this is going through that tricky left-hander, very late on the brakes. Oh, God. Him and Kenyon in the same couple of corners getting caught up, and that's where he would have lost a heap load of time because that Mercedes is somewhat blocking the rejoin. Gets it going again nicely, though. Yeah, not great when you're trying to fight for a championship.
You can't really afford those little moments in a championship battle, especially as, in championship battles that as tight as some of the ones we have here in this in these full classes. You can't afford those little moments that are going to put you at a disadvantage to the others. I mean, you need to be there every single second of every single race, otherwise you will find yourself dropping behind drivers that you would otherwise back yourself to get through on. Well, this is William Humphrey making the move. He'll have the inside line at turn 1, and again, I mean, I think we know how this is going to go. It's not going to be particularly difficult, and in fact, he's pretty much given the position before they even get to the braking zone.
Yeah, he did the same thing for Albert at the exit of 2 and 3 there, so Liam knows that those guys have the pace, and he would fancy just keeping himself toward the front. In fact, where's he gone? Where's he gone?
He's just been overtaken by Thomas Pugh. You could just see
oh,
in the
there
background.
he is. Yes, of course, there he is. I was looking for a pro driver, but he's in fact the AM driver. So, of course, this guy out of position somewhat, not battling in class. He's still got 2 cars, best part of 5 seconds, separating him from Noel Brown. So he doesn't have to do anything to compromise his own race in the defence of these guys. Lets them all through so that the top 3 can continue on. And with just 7 minutes to go here, the racing has become closer and closer as the night has gone on. Humphrey leading Aubert, leading Pugh, was just a second or so separating these 3 drivers. Lots can still happen, but of course Humphrey will be confident knowing that his teammates shouldn't put up a fight and could also do a good job at trying to defend against that Axis Sim Sports machine. We'll come back to those guys shortly. We'll keep an eye on the interval times as we approach into the final 6 minutes. There's a few changes of position here. Nils Culler getting past Scott Malcolm into the turning point at turn 12. Martin Kenyon has a good run here. This is a battle in class for the podium in the TCR AM division. Up the inside goes the number 1. He's had a pretty difficult time of it so far in this final race. Andrew Fellows will, however, have the inside line into the next corner, but I don't think he's going to be alongside. In fact, yes, he is. Gets his nose on the inside there of that Yorkshire team machine. Tricky section upcoming now, though. So many different lines for these guys to take, and I think Kenyon's going to have that one done.
Yeah, just about does, and Martin Kenyon will be, I'm sure, pleased with how he's been able to race this evening. Of course, not quite at the sharp end of the championship, but will not say no to any points that he can give himself throughout the rest of the season, and this is a great stage to do it, as we've been talking about all the way through this evening. Penultimate corner, we dip our way through. Andrew Fellows not really with an answer to Kenyon, who will now try and get away a touch, maybe get after Danny Weir, who's a little bit further up the order, as the leader, Sarika Desler, gets overtaken by one of the GT4s. Not entirely sure who that is, but a driver coming back through the field. It could be Edward Grobe, who is a long way down. Actually, that's not, is it? That's oh, it is. It's Daniel Poole. I thought I was getting ahead of myself. I wasn't.
Well, the thing is, Dara, there's that many flatline cars on this track that it's sometimes difficult to pick them apart. So that one does happen to be the 282 flatline green, but amongst the other 12 of them, or however many there are, doesn't blame you for not being able to quite pick out that livery. But Sarika Desler doing wise there to just let him through. I mean, he didn't really have much choice in the matter. He's on the back of Max Nevincharny out of class. 7 seconds ahead of Danny Weir, who's again gone quietly about his business so far tonight. He finished inside the top 4, I think, in race 1, on the podium in race 2, and now he's inside the top 2 in race 3, so somewhat replicating the form that we see him in that GT3 AM class on a... sorry, not GT3 AM class. Where are we there? Evo class, I think, on a Thursday night. Hasn't quite had the best time of it so far in the TCRs. Currently 8th in the championship coming into tonight, but a very good haul of points could potentially see him getting into the top 5 by the time we conclude here tonight.
Absolutely, and I think that's a realistic target for him to have. There's no doubt about that. Not just tonight, but throughout the rest of the season. Maybe try and get towards the top 3 as well. Anthony Hilton's defending on his way through turn number 13. He's not quite defending from... It's not James Hayworth, is it? Right behind him. Difficult with the timing page, not updating as often as it can at some circuits. But Anthony Hilton coming around towards the triple right-hander will just about be hanging on in that team shelter car. It is Scott Malcolm behind him, he lost all that time. And it is Scott Malcolm trying to pick a way through. But we've only got 2 more laps to go now, and moves really have to happen. Otherwise, you might as well be ruining your ruining the opportunities you may have missed to gain a position or 2 towards the end.
Yeah, it could get pretty interesting here in the TCR Pro class. We've got Andrew McKinley, Jaden Scotton and Jay Corley sharing a part of the circuit, and wouldn't Jay love to get himself up past Jaden, of course, battling in that championship at the moment. Corley in P4, Scotton in P3, only, well, separated by quite a lot of points actually, 89 points coming into tonight, and those guys have shared the top 5 throughout the entire session, so it won't be that much of a deficit for any of these guys really. Over the bump there through the left-hander, Corley seems like he's got the advantage at the moment in the final phase of this race. Let's see if he can get himself back on the podium for one more time tonight. But McKenzie and McKinley haven't really swapped positions all night. It's going to be a hat-trick for McKenzie, which will be his first of the season, of course. McKinley arrived around Road America and did that straight away, so it will be a nice one for the team shelter driver if he can return that one, give it back to him, and yeah, somewhat try to reduce that deficit as we run into the final few rounds of the season. Back to the leaders though. Humphrey still under pressure. It's going to come a time when Aubert has to think about maybe putting his teammate under a bit of pressure, because they don't want to lose out on that one too. They've already had one tonight, and Thomas Pugh will definitely fancy his chances at upsetting the party, I guess you could say, by putting his car in between the 2 in front.
Yeah, I think the tricky thing here is not to trip over each other. You know, generally you think that's quite an easy thing to do, but when you're defending the lead in the way that you are, trying not to, or trying to help your teammate in front makes you almost get a little bit too not relaxed, but a little bit too lazy in how you're defending, because you're not as keen to make the move yourself up in front. When you're fighting for the lead, as we see, but almost you hit one of the curbs, if you're fighting really hard for the lead and you're trying to make that move, you're also going to be fighting as hard to keep that position. But the opposite can also be true. If you're not fighting as hard for the race win, you may be a little bit more prone to an attack for P3, because you're then not going to try and hit the driver in front of you even more. So there's always that trade-off to make, but it does look like Yanis is playing it absolutely perfectly for the time being. Thomas Pugh not close enough yet to have it going to turn 12, but it's all going to be about this exit out of turn number 11.
Yeah, I must say it did look like Thomas had the better tyres coming through the first sector there. He was hooking up those apexes very nice. A couple of occasions Yanis just stepped out wide a little bit, so perhaps in the final lap here we might see a change for position. He's not going to be quite close enough to make a move. However, he has somewhat duked Aubert into a little bit of a defence. He can come back over, getting very close to the back of Humphrey, and that's upset his run here a little bit. He's going to have to defend the inside line through the right-hander at turn 13. Now into the complex section, the double left-hander at 14 and 15. And is he going to go for it here? He has, and Aubert's going to have to leave a little bit of room. Just about keeps it out of each other, should I say. Only a couple corners to go here through 16 and through 17. This is going to be a hell of a tight finish. I bet Yanis Aubert is very pleased that the line is so close to the exit of the final corner.
Yeah, I don't think these guys will have given themselves much more room as they come around the final couple of turns. Thomas Pugh's given it everything. You've really got to respect that. But it's just going to come up short. Yannis Albert has done a fantastic job to help protect William Humphrey, who's just going to win again. Fantastic for the DXT team. The Glass Deck DXT team, I should say.
Oh, thank you, Daria. Thank you. Yeah, very, very tight finish there. The tightest finish that I think we've seen between the top 3 competitors all season. So congratulations to those 3. Great night's racing for the 3 of them, and lots of points scored between them. Congratulations to Liam Fraser, stayed inside the top 4 for the entire night and finished ahead of Robin Noel Brown. Dean Shisby, he's just crossed the line to get a podium for, well, I can't imagine he's had all that many so far this season. He had a great night last week or on Thursday, I forget. I think it was Thursday, wasn't he? He got himself on the podium, and that's another one for the 252. Logan McKenzie then is next to cross the line. He makes it a hat-trick of race victories in the TCR Pro class ahead of Andrew McKinley, and Jaden Scott, and is just about seen off Jay Corley to the line there. Half a second separating those two as they cross over the line. Then it's going to be Hussein Sarakadesla, who's got a nice 4-second margin, in fact 8-second margin to Danny Weir. So that's going to be a massive haul of points for the number 8 machine. Great job for the Kame GP2 driver. Danny Weir, a night to remember for him, probably his best night in that machine so far this season, finishing narrowly ahead of Martin Kenyon to finally round off the podiums in all of our classes. Gordon Hales not far behind either. Pretty good points. Not what you would have hoped for, challenging Sarakadesla, but he's made the best of a bad situation. Brings some points. Good enough for P4.
A great night for few of the drivers, few of the teams as well, not least that Glass Tech DXT team. We've still got Rob Smith coming around the final couple of corners. Always good to see. Shame that we lost the likes of Bailey Ludbrook, Iyenga, Hannington and Rubino in this race. Rubino having an awful night, not finishing any of the 3 races, but I think he'll be thinking he'll be back next week. Imola is where we'll be. Very different surroundings, but for Rob Smith to complete us through, I think he'll be pleased with making sure he at least got to the finish line in that one.
Absolutely right. Well, that was a cracking session. Lots and lots of action. And when you have 3 race starts, 3 checkered flags, it's a lot to manage. But the drivers have done very, very well. So in just a moment then, we'll run through the results for the final time tonight from that feature race. Of course, all races sharing equal points, 50 points for the winner. But if you manage to get 3 race victories like we've seen Humphrey and McKenzie do, then that is a 150 to bring back for your championship. And of course, for the teams. So then, let's have a look at the race results once again, starting with that GT4 Pro class. And we've said it so many times, we're going to say it again. The form continues. It's so many off the spin that we're going to lose count by this point, Dara. William Humphrey crosses the line first, but by one of the tightest margins that we've seen all season, not only to P2, but also to P3. So a cracking effort by Yannis Aubert and Thomas Pugh, the other podium sitters who ran the championship leader all the way to the line and have done so well throughout the session tonight. 10 seconds ahead of Joe Sparrow, who led us across the line on the front row at the start of the race. Finished, though, in a very commendable P4 ahead of Jeff Hibbert, rounding out the top 5. The JST partner of Stephen Donnelly will be inside the top 6, so all in all, a good session for them this evening, ahead of Adam Atherton and Jeremy Ulemans inside the top 8. It'll be Marius Sidmer and Mitchell Costas inside the top 11, with Loudons Den Ouden finishing in P11.
Good end to the night in the pros. Over in the AMs, it was, not as many finishes in the end, but a great way to end the night for Liam Fraser. Had a difficult start, of course, spun around at the opening couple of corners in race 1 and spent the rest of the evening trying to recover, and recover he did. Will keep himself firmly in contention for the championship. Will have dropped away a touch from the likes of Robin L. Brown and Niels Kula, but he won't be dropping the points tonight after 50 in this 3rd race. Robin L. Brown was P2 ahead of Dean Cheeseby, who rounded out the podium for his first podium of the season. Matt Stace was 4th ahead of Niels Kula. It will be Noel Brown, whoever takes Niels Kula for the championship lead, after Nikula, the Latvian, could only finish 5th. Greg and Daniel Poole were within a minute of the race winner in 6th and in 7th, with Edward Grobe on the lead lap. Sadly for Luke Bailey, John LeBrook and Charlie Stottard too far down, too many laps down. They were out of the race and won't score in race number 3.
And now then, let's take a look at how the TCRs shape up. Quite similar for the top 5 this entire session. Logan McKinsey ahead of Andrew McKinley and Jaden Scotton on that podium. And there he is, actually, Logan McKinsey, once again appearing in shot. I think he did that around Long Beach when we were running through the order. Is he doing that on purpose? Or maybe he's getting some photos for him and his team. Nonetheless, great picture to get there for our man who scored maximum points tonight. 150 brought home for Team Shelter. Jay Corley and James Howarth will finish inside the top 5 ahead of Anthony Hilton and Max Nevinshine in the top 7. It'll be Scott Malcolm and Kevin Marshall, so the 2 final points scorers. And sadly for Alec Yenga, 9 laps down, once again will not score any points in his class.
Finally then, TCR arms, and it was again 3 out of 3 for Hüseyin Samakadesla, the Turkish driver. Absolutely smashing it tonight, and he is going to lead the championship by a fair distance. He's going to be enjoying life at the top of the tree, I'm sure, and we'll see what he can do in the closing rounds of the season. Danny Weir was second, ahead of Martin Kenyon, who rounded out our podium sitters. Gordon Hales was 4th for the South African, just ahead of Andrew Fellows, only by a couple of tenths of a second. In P6 in the end, it was Rob Smith, who was the last finisher, with Jason Haddington and Steve Rubino, neither of them finishing the race. No real meaningful points for either of them tonight, and they're going to be licking their wounds going into next week.
Very, very good. Right then, we have a couple of drivers waiting to speak to us, a nice number, so we should be able to cover most of them. So let's just prepare for that, and then we can get ourselves underway and speak to a couple of our drivers.
Yeah, a couple of our drivers who have had some decent evenings, a couple of podiums for a few of them. Maybe nice to be able to speak to Danny Weir first after his 2 second places tonight, and we will drag him in now. Danny, welcome in. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Good stuff, Danny. Well, welcome in once again. We were just saying that was probably one of your more successful nights in a TCR, obviously comparing it to the form that you're having over on a Thursday night. Talk us through that one. COTA, maybe not the best track for these cars, quite long, quite difficult. How did you find that in comparison to the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, this track is not built for this car. It's very difficult. You get like oversteer and understeer in the same corner, and being a front wheel drive, it's just so hard to keep control of. But yeah, very difficult track. Made it harder with all the GT4s, obviously having a lot faster lines than we could do. But yeah, it's definitely not built for this. Not built for this track.
Yeah, and only a couple of rounds to go. Well, more than a couple of rounds, 4 rounds to go. Do you think that's going to spark you into some sort of contention? Maybe came into tonight inside the top 8. I haven't done the maths, but you may be somewhere around the top 5 by now. Are you focusing more on a Thursday, perhaps, or do you think you've got the capacity to go for both?
No, my focus is the Thursday. Like, this was only meant to be like just like I like driving the TCRs. So yeah, my focus is mainly on the Thursday. It's good as well because of these calendars marry up. I use this as kind of like a testing ground. So I know it's a completely different beast, but it kind of gives you an idea of braking points, stuff like that. So this is basically just practice for me for Thursday.
Yeah, and for you, Danny, I mean, looking forward generally, I mean, you always have the Monday to help you practice for the Thursday. Are you finding that's helping you out, or as you get in towards the GT3s on a Thursday?
I think so. It's obviously they drive completely different, but it's the braking zones. Some of it's for me as well. Some of the track layouts I don't know, so I use the TCRs to kind of learn them, and they're a lot slower cars, so you do kind of learn them a bit easier. But tracks like this, where they're very famous in F1, I do know, so there's not much I can really gain from this. I just do enjoy the racing side of it. But it's all experience. It's all just getting to know where you can and can't overtake as well. So yeah, little things you can take, but not on the whole. But yeah, you can obviously take a little bit.
Well, good. Let's see if that practice turns out good for you on Thursday. So we might speak to you again there because your form's been pretty strong. So before we let you go, Danny, as always, if you'd like to give anybody a shout out, you can go ahead and do that now.
Yeah, shout out to also the DXT team. They did very good. Also, I'm going to give a bit of commiserations to Rob Smith. He got involved in a bit of an incident that wasn't really his fault in that last race. And we've been on for a good battle, but hats off to him and Andrew Fellows. have a good battle with them all the time, as you can see actually on the race now, side by side with me. But yeah, very good from them too as well. And obviously you guys, thank you for streaming it as always.
Good stuff, Danny. Well, good luck in your final prep for Thursday, and fingers crossed we'll have you back in the booth after if you can keep that run going. So yeah, good luck.
I hope so.
Next couple of days, and yeah, we'll speak to you then.
Thanks, guys.
Good stuff, man. Enjoy. Cheers.
In a bit.
Annie, we're then P2 a couple of times this evening. Always good to be able to speak to him. Next up, we're going to be able to speak to Marius Hibmer, one of the drivers in the GT4 Pros, after he had a decent evening. Marius, welcome in. Can you hear us?
Yep.
Good stuff, Marius. Well, welcome back in once again. Been a couple of weeks since we last spoke to you, and I mean, you might have to remind me about your earlier results. Of course, a P8 finish for you in was it P8 or P9? P9 finish for you in that final race, I think. Sorry, there's a lot to track. But yeah, talk us through that night. Talk us through how things are going in that Porsche. Seems like it was maybe the right decision to make that switch away from the Aston Martin.
Yeah, it's very different to Porsche, definitely. It drives very differently. It's been difficult to get used to. But for this race, I did so much practice and got used to it, and I even got very close to some of Williams' times as well. So I was very confident heading in, and race 1 went really well. Solid P2 finish. Then race 2, I get the best start ever. I go from P9 to P4 in half a lap, and then I just get caught up in someone else's incident and lose maybe 15 seconds also behind TCRs. And looking at the gap, I could have won it because I was, I think, 10, 11 seconds behind the leaders when the race was over. So yeah, that was a real bummer. And then race 3 was just getting taken out at turn 1 as well. So, and yeah, just not much hope after that. I'm so far behind.
For you, Marius, I mean, you've had a good season so far, generally, some really good results, a few podiums in there as well, a podium, of course, in the opening race this evening. You're only about 50 points or so behind that top 3. Do you feel confident in the final 4 rounds you can try and push for one of those top 3 positions and maybe get a trophy to trophy your season?
Well, yeah, I'm still confident. I know I have the pace, I just need to keep it clean. And I think if everything went well tonight, I would be a lot closer than 50 points away. But it's racing, accidents happen, and you can never really predict the future. But on pure pace, I'm confident I have the pace to do it. I just need to keep it clean.
Any particular circuits that stand out for you in the next couple? We've got Imola, Mugello, Bathurst, Brands Hatch. Pretty tricky last 2 races there, but Imola and Mugello back to Europe. Perhaps some more familiar tracks for some of these guys.
Yeah, well, I'm quite looking forward to Bathurst actually, because I know it's gonna be a crash fest. The walls are so tight, and again, it's just about keeping it clean, and that's if I can keep it clean there, it's gonna be good points as well, and it's a fun circuit too.
Good stuff. Well, fingers crossed that it all goes well for you in that push for the top 3. I think yeah, we'll get a good idea about that final run-in. But thanks for joining us as always. And before we let you go, if there's anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to, then you can go ahead and do that now.
Yep. I think I'll give a shout out to William Humphrey, because he's been, despite being rivals on the track, actually been really helpful as well, and even given me access to some telemetry data that helped me get faster and helped me get used to the Porsche, and just been really nice as well. So yeah.
That's always good to hear. That's very nice. Healthy competition is always a good thing. And yeah, he was actually complimenting your pace earlier in the week, but a little bit worried, thinking that you might, well, you were right up there in qualifying, obviously the closest man in the end. So that's good news. Good to hear. Good stuff, Marius. Well, thanks for joining us. And yeah, fingers crossed the next couple of weeks go well for you, and maybe we'll have another word before the end of the season.
Yep.
Thank you, man. Cheers. Enjoy your night.
Thanks, you too.
Is to Marius there for joining us. Always good to be able to speak to him. And finally, we'll be able to speak to Andrew Fellows, who had a decent enough evening over in the TCR. Up to P6 in the championship. Andrew, welcome. Can you hear us?
I can. Good evening.
Welcome back, Andrew. It's been a little while. Welcome back to the booth. I'm glad that you've joined us once again. We've just been speaking to your teammate there, Marius, who had a pretty nice night. Not the best night he's had all season, but a pretty decent night all in all. Talk us through your session there, finishing P5, I think. Was it P5? No, maybe just outside the top 5 in that final race. But we were speaking to Danny earlier on. Maybe not the best track for these cars. All in all, how did you find that?
Yeah, I really struggled in these cars, to be fair. I did a bit of practice. I only bought the track like yesterday, day before. So I've struggled with that first sector. It's horrible in these cars. It's just so much understeer. But yeah, I mean, I think I'll come away with a 6th and 2/5 maybe. Some of the people that I'm fighting for just ahead of me had bad nights, which is lucky for me, I suppose. But race 1, I didn't even make it at turn 2, to be fair. At turn 1, there was carnage in front of me, and I ended up involved in it again. I've not had the best of luck with that. Race 2, I ended up hitting Rob, my teammate, unfortunately. But we both managed to continue, so it wasn't too bad. There's an incident ahead, and I braked, and first lap, cold rear tyres, I ended up sideways. But then, yeah, race 3 was pretty good, actually. I enjoyed race 3. Battling Rob and Danny until poor Danny and Rob had an incident with a GT4. But yeah, it was a good race, to be fair, the third one.
It's a little bit of momentum for you though, Andrew. Coming out of this one, 96 points on the night, far more than the likes of Jason Addington, who's now going to slip behind you in the championship. With Imola, Mugello, Bathurst and Brands upcoming, which track are you most looking forward to, and do you feel like you can get any much further up the order?
Well, I know Jason's missing next week, and so is Steve, I think, as well. So that might help in that respect. But yeah, I think Mugello, I didn't do very well last time we went there. But that was like 20 weeks ago, so maybe I can do better this time. Bathurst, it's a tricky one. I'm gonna have to practice that one really hard, to be fair. That one's quite a tricky one, but I think the one I'm most looking forward to is gonna be Brands, because I went really well there in the first season of TCR, battling Mr. Bostock and Mr. Haworth for all 3 races, and they were obviously very, very quick. So top 3 in that race would be ideal, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the tracks upcoming are slightly more favourable to these kind of circuits. Of course, Brands Hatch and Bathurst. I mean, it'll be very interesting actually watching these cars go through the hills at Bathurst, but I think Brands is about the best circuit that you're going to get for these kind of cars. And I'm wondering maybe in those final few races if you can say goodbye to those P7s, P6s, etc. Get yourself back on the podium like you did all the way back at the start of the season.
Yeah, I hope so. To be fair, it's been a bit of a rough season for me. I was joking with Rob earlier that I needed to finish P2 this season, because first season I did P4, P3 in the last season, so it's time for P2. But I don't think that's on the cards, but you never know.
Absolutely. Well, awesome to have you back in the booth, Andrew. Hopefully more positive results. We can keep speaking to you next maybe a few more times before the end of the season. But before we let you go, if there's anyone you'd like to give a shout out to, then you can do that now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, obviously all the Flatline guys, brilliant as usual in the chat. All of you guys that run the championship and the streams, really well professionally run. And the drivers as well, to be fair, everyone's nice and friendly. Some good racing on the most part. Obviously there's some issues, but you know, that happens in every championship. Some people make mistakes. But yeah, it's been really good, and thank you for having me in the booth again.
Good stuff, Andrew. Well, thanks for joining us, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening, and good luck with your prep for next week.
And you guys.
Cheers, man. Speak soon.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
All right.
And good always to speak to Andrew Follows after a decent evening for him. I will quickly say, Joe, that in the championship battles, William Humphrey now has a 139-point lead. The Noel Brown Cooler battle is down to 8 again, and we've still got Liam Fraser in there, of course. McKinley's gap is 81 to McKinsey, and Sarah Cadeth has opened a 69-point gap to Gordon Hales. So GT4 AM is kind of where it's at the moment.
Yeah, well, we saw that right at the start. Yeah, the AM class was where it was in both categories, and now one's dropped off, and it's just the GT4 AMs. Well, not with anything left to fight for, but of course, yeah, very, very tense for those guys. I probably wouldn't like to be part of such a tight battle with so many races to go. It's not like you've only got to deal with next week. You've got the next month to hold on to the position that you find yourself in, which is certainly not an easy thing to do. But they've all made it through, most of them at least, have made it through the racing tonight. So we've had a cracking session. 4 more weeks to go in this championship, a handful of weeks left to go on a Thursday night. And of course, if you'd like to join us, you can scan the QR code on screen now. That will take you to the ESR Discord server, where we have, well, we don't have availability for this season, but we do have availability for our new European GT Championship. Details for that were announced on Saturday morning. Sign-ups available now. Still half the grid or so left to be filled. So if you're interested, get yourself and one of the teammates along. Sign up as a pair and take part in ESR's brand new series. And of course, information will soon follow about what will occur on a Monday and on a Thursday. So no change there, just another series in the offing. So thanks all of you for watching. Thanks everyone for staying around until the end. As always, myself and Dara will catch you on Thursday night, back here once again around COTA for round 7 of the GT3 Championship. It promises to be a pretty good one in machinery that's a little bit better suited to this kind of circuit. Thanks for watching all, and we'll see you then.